So the public works director, so we promoted one of the yeah. I think they actually already have a couple of candidates that we are interested in. One of which works in the next guy.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, December the 7th, 2021. To start the meeting, could you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you everybody for being here. Please be aware that this meeting is being streamed on our Township YouTube channel, and the meeting may also be audio or video recorded by people present in the room. We have an agenda that's set in advance, but I see a lot of people here, and I believe you're here to talk to the board about a particular issue that that's come up. And I'm proposing that we modify the agenda so that we can have a public comment session at the beginning versus you having to potentially wait to make comments as we typically do at the end of the meeting, which can be, a couple of hours from now. So I'd like to see if there's a board member that would like to make a motion to include public comments at the beginning of the meeting.
I'll do that.
Thank you, Hugh. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. Is there any discussion from the public about this before we vote on it? This is just about voting on and having a public comment section. Okay. Margie?
I just want to comment that I think it's a great idea. The board used to do this in all its history. It just stopped offering this public comment at the beginning of the meetings, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm very happy to see that you're offering that for those that don't wish to stay around for the whole meeting. So thanks.
Thank you for your comment, Margie. Okay, so ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Okay, so we're going to have the start of the meeting begin with a public comment section. So is there anybody who would like to address the board about an issue that is not on the agenda tonight? Yes, sir. Would you mind coming up to the mic? Is the microphone
Sure.
on, Casey? Would you mind coming up to the microphone and state your name and address, please?
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Zhang. I'm a resident of the West Goshen Mobile Home Park out on Westchester Pike. And I'd like to read a petition that we're going to turn into you folks tonight. Okay. We, the undersigned owners, residents, and occupants of the West Goshen Mobile Home Park located at 1159 Westchester's Pike, respectfully request that the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors deny any application, effort, or action by any current or future owner to change the current zoning of the West Goshen Mobile Home Park. The West Goshen Mobile Home Park is only one of 2 areas in the township zoned for mobile home use, the other being between Balmar Street and West Town Road, extending from just south of Market Street to the Route 202 bypass. You have to excuse me, I have COPD.
If you want to take your mask
You
off,
know what?
it'd be okay for you to make a presentation.
Well, let me see if that helps.
Okay.
Where were we? The aforementioned area is currently developed with commercial and industrial uses and is not usable as a mobile home park. We, the undersigned, believe and therefore allege as fact that no owner of property in that area is going to bear the expense to tear down an existing profitable building or buildings in order to create a mobile home park. The reality is that the West Goshen Mobile Home Park is the only area in West Goshen on which mobile home use will ever occur. If the Board of Supervisors agrees to rezone the West Goshen Mobile Home Park property, we, the undersigned, believe that would cause mobile home usage to be completely excluded in West Goshen Township. This would be in violation of the fair share doctrine established in the case Zurich versus Zoning Hearing Board of Upper Providence Township in 1977. In addition to the potential exclusionary zoning issue, rezoning of the West Goshen Mobile Home Park would force approximately 60 families out of our very modestly priced homes into a housing and rental market that is many multiples of our lot rent currently. The cost of relocating would be prohibitive and would exclude us from the Westchester area that many of us have called home for many years. It would also cause an interruption of relationships with family, friends, schools, employment, and our community. Many of our residents are senior citizens, veterans, disabled children, live on fixed income, and or otherwise disadvantaged. A forced move out of our homes would be a devastating hardship on all of us that call West Goshen Mobile Home Park home. Respectfully submitted by the undersigned the 7th day of December 2021. I have a copy for the 5 supervisors here. Now, I do have 4 pages of signatures here. There is only 1 signature per household that we put on here, as it was hard to get around and get everybody together. And we did have a couple meetings. It went very well, where a lot of people showed up. Yes, I'm hopeful that you folks will look at this and rule in our favor on the 21st meeting, or the meeting on the 21st, I should say. But this here is the actual the actual petition with the original signature.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Zhang. You know, I appreciate you providing that information to the board.
That's the
Thank you.
original letter.
I'll just let you take care of that now.
Oh, okay, okay.
Great job.
And one for you, too. And
So thank you very much, Mr. Zhang. The board is aware that the property was under an agreement of sale with some contingencies. That's really the extent of what we know at this point. There's been no submission or application to the township for any change in zoning at this point. So in terms of the meeting on the 21st of December, at this point, given we're 2 weeks away, there won't be anything on the agenda because we haven't had any application or petition from a developer to do anything. So at this point, there's nothing further for us to consider in 2021. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen in terms of a property sale by the owner of the property, and we'll just have to see what happens on that. But we certainly appreciate you providing us with this petition and the information in it, and taking the time for the community and the residents to sign this and to be here tonight. We fully understand your concern. So I'm going to open it up for comments from the rest of the board, and then if there's anyone else who wants to speak that's here tonight, you're free to do that. We've opened this up with a public comment section. So before that, is there any other board member comments?
May I suggest this year what they have to say, and then possibly we can comment.
Okay. So with that suggestion, is there anyone else who would like to make a comment publicly here tonight? Yes. Would you mind coming to the microphone and stating your name and your address, please?
Yes, my name is Judy Adams. I live at 1159 Westchester Pike, Lot 21 in West Goshen Mobile Home Park. And I'm just going to read a letter that I wrote to the board, and it more or less concerns me individually, but collectively it applies to everybody in the park. So, to the Board of West Goshen Township Supervisors, we at the Goshen Mobile Home Park appreciate all the work you've been putting in to assist us in what we're doing. And I wanted to share some information with you so you may better understand our plight. I purchased my home 13 years ago and received quite an education on buying a mobile home. I paid $42,000 plus interest on my house. I started looking for financing with a company that finances mobile homes. They had such strict rules I gave up. Started visiting banks here in the area. Many doors slammed in my face because they do not finance mobile homes. Finally, National Pen said yes. Well, here another journey begins. You need 20% down. You need excellent credit. And the whole process takes a little over a month. Then you have to be vetted by the mobile home park. And since the mention of the sale of our mobile home park, I started looking around for other homes. Well, even 70 miles in any direction from here, the cost of a comparable mobile home for what I have now is $90,000 plus. So doing the math, I would need $18,000 down plus moving expenses. Well, that's just the beginning of my problem. Once I have to leave this area, I will be forced to close my pet sitting business, which I've run successfully for 43 years. And then I'll be living on Social Security because I'm supposed to retire next year. And how do I finance a new home on Social Security? And going to a new area, you don't just take your pet sitting business and move it over to Macungie, PA, because it doesn't work that way. It took 43 years to build my business. And so please, take all this into consideration when you're rendering your decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Adams. Is there anyone else who would like to make a statement or comment? Yes, sir.
I have a question. First of all,
Would you mind coming to the microphone and just stating your name and address, please?
my name is Mel Ross.
I'm sorry, what's your last name?
My name is Mel Ross. I'm park manager, for what it's worth, of West Goshen Mobile Home Park. More or less just a liaison between the current owners and the residents. But I'm a resident and I have my own home there, and it means a lot to me. Before I proceed any further, I need to ask you all, what decision are you making on the 21st?
So as I said earlier, we don't have any decision to make on the 21st. There is no application that has been made by the developer to this board or to the township at this point. What we do know is that there was a sale agreement contingent upon certain conditions made to the current property owner. That property owner notifies, the current property owner notifies the residents, and the township is aware of the potential buyer looking to potentially redevelop this property. But they've not made any application to do so. So as of today, there is nothing that's going to happen this year on this property, because we have 2 weeks to our next meeting, and this board will not put on the agenda anything with less than 2 weeks' notice. So we've not even got an application yet, and it'll be next year if and when anything is going to happen.
Okay. Well, two things on that. First of all, first, it just feels as if this is happening now, and I guess it's a little cloudy as to the relationship of the two issues. One, the sale from one owner to another, and the very likely ultimate request for rezoning from the new owner. So I guess it feels to all of us, and that's why we're here now, it feels like it's happening now. And that's why we're here now, with such a sense of urgency. So I want to explain that.
Yeah. So I'm going to commend you for being, on top of what the issue is for yourselves, to have received that information from the current property owner saying the property is going to be sold, understanding what that might mean for your lives in where you live now, and coming to the township with your concerns. That's commendable, and I admire you all for doing that. As I said, at this point, though, we don't have any indication of what the specific buyer intends to ask for from the township. They have not submitted an application. We don't even know if this sale is going to go through at this point. It's just, that's the extent of our knowledge on it. And in case, unless there's something else that's happened, so.
No, that's exactly stated. And the township has no interaction with the current owner or the prospective owner. We're not involved at all in that process. That's a private sale between two private individuals or two companies. The only time the township gets involved is when the current owner or a new owner would come in then for some type of application. And again, as the chairman stated, we have none at this time. We have nothing, the board has nothing to act on because we don't have an application from anyone in front of us right now.
Okay, well, I mean, would there be sufficient advance notice to all of us, when the formal application is presented, for rezoning for the purpose of...
So I'm going to commit to you tonight, we won't accept anything on the board's agenda without 2 weeks' notice. And that 2 weeks' notice we will inform all the residents. We have your address. We can let you know what is coming before the board with that 2 weeks' notice. If anything does, we don't know if it will or not, but we'll commit to making sure you're aware of anything the board's going to have in front of it.
Okay. Of course, I mean, there's going to be a ton of hardship stories, potential super hardship stories, but now it kind of seems a little premature to go into that stuff because, like you say, no formal application has been made at this point. So, I brought one person in particular who's on retired income, walks on crutches. He's on a fixed income. He barely makes ends. I mean, he's, like I said at a previous meeting, I mean, he's finished. If they decide to convert this from a mobile home park to garden apartments of whatever kind, I don't see. He came to me to ask me, what should I do? I said, I don't know. Pray. That's all I could advise him. So I mean, and just I guess my final comment would be, for me personally, this is my source of happiness, my source of success. When things go bad, I always say, at least I have my home. And that's the home that I built up. That's the land. When I had a tree fall on my mobile home about 4 or 5 months ago, and I was insured. I got $30,000 in the bank, and like I said, I was happy to use every penny of that money to restore my home. I mean, I worked continuously to improve my home and the property outside. It's me. That's me. It's my home, and it's where I want to be. I came here in 1985, and it's where I've lived since 1985, and it's where I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And it's it's not just a simple thing. Well, you can pick up and cart your home to someplace else. That's not so easy. Westchester is my home, and West Goshen Mobile Home Park is my home. So, but again, I guess it's kind of premature for some of these stories because there's no formal application. We will, I guarantee you, we will all be here if and when that does happen.
As I said, I commit to making sure you have that information. Mr. Ross, I thank you. As you know, the board was aware of the property sale and wanted to understand what redevelopment might mean, and that is why individual board members have visited the property and met with many of you and heard the conversation and why we're here today. So again, I thank you, and we will let you know absolutely. And the presence of the number of people in the room speaks for itself from my perspective. Is there any other board comments or questions? Or
I have a question.
Sure.
This is more of a just operations question, things that we might be able, steps we may be able to take now. I would like to be able to send all of you home with some hope, right? Some good news, something to help you get through the holidays. I think I met with all of you last weekend with John. You know where I stand on this issue. And I want to ask the board if it's appropriate for us to take a position personally on this issue now and have the conversation about whether the developer were to approach us about a project and rezoning, how we feel about it.
Well, I can say if the proposal was before the board right now to rezone the MPD, the multipurpose district, to a C4 area to allow apartment complexes, I would vote no.
So because there's no actual application, that's a position that's hypothetical at this point. I just want to point out, we have to be legally careful here a little bit around it. Kristen, I'm looking at you. Is there any guidance you need to give the board before we weigh in individually?
I just don't want the board to make a vote on something that isn't in reality right now. It's not pending.
But we can state it.
A vote wouldn't be, a vote would be a motion, a second, and all in favor, right? I mean, that's.
But I just think it's not, for everybody's rights, it's not fair to prejudge something that you don't have before you know it. So.
I have a question. Possibly you can answer, sir, or maybe Mr. Zhang or whomever. How many children are living there at the mobile home park, and how many could potentially be displaced if that mobile home park was dispersed?
There's about 35.
35 children?
About 35 children.
Okay, thank you.
I know there's at least 35.
That's a lot more. Yeah.
Would anyone else like to, we've opened it up to public comment. There will be obviously more to come, but if anyone else does feel they would like to speak tonight, having come here, please feel free to do so. Okay, Malachi, do you want to say something?
Go ahead.
Good evening, Marty Swart, West Goshen Township. I'm happy to see you all here tonight. I hope I never have to see you again, because I hope this application never comes through. But I come to these meetings every month. I have for the last 7 years. And as the manager said, I think there's a lot more going on that, like many things in this township, I believe, aren't transparent. And even though the board may not know what's going on, I feel like the potential buyer or the current owner has been in talks with the township manager or the township zoning officer or the township engineer for months. So I would hope that right now staff might talk to the audience and discuss what they know about the project, because I know enough that a potential buyer would not have entered into an agreement of sale if he got some type of assurance from somebody at the township that that property could somehow be rezoned. So I would just like to hear from township staff if the board chair would allow that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Margie. That is speculative, and what you just said is not accurate. So it's not true that there's a discussion around rezoning this property. An application would have to be made and come before the board. So we know there's a buyer. It was like the agreement of sale was a conditional. So we don't know what that means. It might mean a price to be met that couldn't be met initially. It might mean conditions on zoning changes. We've no idea. Financing, it's a private property sale. That's what's got the board interested, because we know it's, it's for sale. And that's why the residents got a notice of a potential agreement of sale.
How did the board learn about it?
No, I just have a question. Again, this is about process, and I know that legally I don't want to step over any lines here, but isn't it in our purview as the board to just deny the developer even the opportunity to present this at a public meeting if all of us individually take a position that we don't want to entertain the proposal? I mean, it would be the same thing as if Casey were to send an email to all of us saying, individually polling us on whether or not we would want to move forward in hearing the proposal.
Yeah, but you can't stop somebody. Your ordinance allows anybody who's a property owner or equitable owner of property in the township to file an application to the township. You can't deny a person that right. The board then has the discretion to say we're not going to move forward with it, and we're not, because it's in your legislative power to decide whether you're willing to amend your zoning ordinance. And if you know from the outset you're not willing to do that, then you don't have to proceed with the application, but you can't tell somebody they can't file an application.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other people who would like to make a comment?
I just want to say, if the contingency does have something to do with rezoning, then there's something we're all missing somehow. That's all that I'm thinking.
Well, it's not that we're missing. It's just, like I said, it's an agreement between two parties. They can agree on whatever terms and conditions of sale they want. As Kristen just explained, that process has to involve the board if it involves any rezoning. So we don't know what's in that condition when we've had the conversation. So I just want to thank you all for being here. You're, like I said, the fact that everyone has taken the time to come this evening says volumes about how you feel about this, and obviously the board is fully aware we've been doing our own due diligence. So thank you, everyone. You can stay and watch the rest of our business get made. It takes a couple hours. You may not want to waste your time doing that. If you feel it's happy for you to stay, but if you want to take the time out of leave, that's fine too. So
I got a couple of questions.
okay, would you mind going to the microphone?
My name is Tom Ralston. I live at 59 Westchester Pike, lot X24. Moved in there in February of 1995. Okay, so the potential buyer we know is a developer. So is there any cost known for what the sale is going to be right now?
We have no information on that.
Because if a developer is buying the property, he's got one goal in mind. He wants to make more money. Am I right?
I don't think he wants to operate it as a mobile home park.
Yeah, well, if that's, say he pays $4 million for the property, it'll pay off in say 8 years, and he'll start making money off of it. If it's more than that, they're not going to want to wait 8, 10, 12 years to be able to start making money off the property. But I mean, we all care. We're all worried about what's going on here. Now, we know it's a developer who wants to purchase the property. Well, developers' goal is to make profit. Correct? And I don't understand, but we're all here now, but there's actually nothing that can be denied or agreed on or anything until after the property is sold, and if and when that they make want to make a change in the zoning, that there's nothing we can do or say, correct?
The township is not involved with the property sale between private entities.
Okay, well, the property owners have the right to sell the property.
Yes.
Okay, so it's, but it's not that somebody that's just gonna come and take over the park and run it. These are big business guys and developers, and they're gonna wanna make changes. But until there is until they decide that they want to do that and put in applications or anything like that, there's not much we can do, correct? So there's a meeting next Tuesday night, and what is that in reference to?
So the board meets twice a month.
Okay.
On the 21st of December, which is 2 weeks from tonight,
All right.
we have our final meeting of the year. At this point, since we've had no application, there'll be nothing on that agenda relevant to this property.
Okay, but other than us being informed that there is an application for a change in zoning, is there anything we can do?
What you've done tonight is what you can do. Come out here and voice your concern about the sale of the property and whether it gets redeveloped, it would impact your lives. That's what you've done, and
Absolutely.
the board heard you loud and clear. Okay? Thank you.
May I make one quick legal question?
Sure.
I'm just curious, and this might be for our solicitor, Ms. Camp, but, and I don't know for sure, but my father lives in a mobile home park, and I believe, well, I know he pays some type of tax. It's a reduced lot tax. I don't know if it's a school tax or a property tax. When I was on Chesapeake Views today, I noticed that, and that lists each property and lot owner, and it shows an assessment on their lot. And I'm just wondering if that's an angle that the residents might want to ask legal counsel, if they've been paying taxes on that lot to the school district or the township, does anybody have the right to pull that out from under you? So just something to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Could I ask the township staff and your solicitor or Craig or township engineer describe the process to those in the room here on if a application is made for a zoning change and or a land development project application is made, what is the process that must be followed after the application is submitted to the township?
So, as I mentioned before, in response to Ms. Connie's comment, any property owner or equitable owner has the right to file a petition to change the zoning ordinance. And including in the zoning ordinance is changing the designation of the zoning map designation of property. That process has to go through, first of all, the board has no legal obligation to move that process forward. The board sits in many different hats. One of their hats is as legislators. So they legislate and make the ordinances, including the zoning ordinance and the zoning map. So when they're sitting as legislators, they have it's completely their discretion whether they want to move that petition to amend an ordinance or a zoning map forward. If they at the outset say no, we're not interested in it, that's the end of it. If they're interested in it, it has to go through a public hearing process. The ordinance itself and the map change itself has to go to the Township's Planning Commission, which they meet publicly the second Tuesday of every month. It also has to be sent to the Chester County Planning Commission, who has to review and comment upon that. And then, if they decide to move it forward to a public hearing, the property would have to be posted with notice 7 days prior to the public hearing. Every property owner within the property proposed to be rezoned will get written notice 30 days prior to the hearing. And the hearing is advertised in the Daily Local News not less than 30, or not more than 30 and not less than 7 days prior to the hearing for 2 consecutive weeks. So there's a lot of public notice requirements. But in this type of an application, if something were to be filed, if the sale goes forward, which it's a private property sale, there's no obligation under any law that the township can mandate that somebody, just like if you sell your house, the township can't make you share with the township what that agreement of sale says. That's a completely private contract that the township is not privy to, does not know the terms of, and is not familiar with who the parties other than the current owner. So we don't know about that. If in fact the sale goes forward and the buyer says, hey, I want to try to get this changed, and they file something with the township, the board can say they have to do it in public. Actually, Casey, as the staff, could send to individual board members, tell me individually how you feel, because they can't have discussions among a quorum of them outside of a public meeting. But if a majority of the board says we're not interested in that, you can go back to the buyer or the developer and say we're not moving this forward, and that's the end of it. So at that point in time, they would have as anybody who buys that land, they'd have an opportunity to build on it or develop on it, whatever the ordinance allows for the multi-purpose district where it's currently zoned, right? So, that's anybody has that opportunity. So I just want to make sure, and I'm not saying this as a scare or a threat, but understand that anybody who buys that property has the right to use it in accordance with the multi-purpose use regulations. There's no guarantee that that it's going to stay as a mobile home park, because anybody can come in. If the mobile home park owner sells it, that potential buyer, whether or not they get a zoning map change, they have the right to use it the way the zoning ordinance today allows them to use it. So if that was the case and they wanted to present a development that's something different, that process, John, goes through a public process. They'd have to file a subdivision or land development application. That application has to go to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation. It also goes to the Chester County Planning Commission. Ultimately, it's the Board of Supervisors' decision. If it's a land development, it has to meet various codes in the township, and then ultimately it would come to the board for a public vote at a public meeting. All of these things have to be on the agenda, and all of these things, I think the board is committed to making sure you are well informed of anything that's going to happen in the future.
And one last question, just to follow up. And currently, right now, the mobile home park is zoned multi-purpose district. What can be built in that district?
You could build warehouses, you could build manufacturing facilities by right. Anything under the I-2 and I-3 zoning district are by right uses in that zoning district.
What about apartment buildings?
Apartment building is not a by right use. That would require text amendment or a zoning change. But the owner could sell that property today, and they wouldn't need to do anything if they went with a by right use, except for file a development application, and that's it. As long as they meet the saldo and the zoning requirements, they can't be stopped.
So they can make us all move out, because if they wanted to put warehouses in there, or a big warehouse, or a big manufacturing plant or something. It's right there, West Goshen, really? That's what that's zoned for?
That is the MPD zoning district. The MPD allows for the I-2, and allowable uses under the I-2 and I-3 zoning districts by right, which is specific to Baltimore Street, because a lot of that's industrial uses.
Yes.
So.
Wow, really?
Well, wait a minute now. Wouldn't that be like playing games if they did what he just suggested? Like they brought in manufacturing for a while, got rid of all of us, then there's nobody to stand up and raise their hand.
Exactly. Exactly. Let's just beat our next step.
And there's no way to stop this from happening?
Nope.
Well, they could build a warehouse there, cover that entire property, tear the thing down and have it rezoned for apartments. That'd probably be much easier to go through.
Yep.
Again, that would require the board to rezone that, and it seems to me.
Right, but I mean,
Yes, but wouldn't be anybody here to
60
fight.
families.
Yeah, you wouldn't be anybody here to fight.
I have a
But
question.
they know,
I have a question relative to MPD zoning in West Goshen. How many areas are MPD, Bill?
What's MPD?
Multi-purpose district. So I believe there's 2, and if you look at our zoning map, this is a classic example of what you would consider spot zoning. If you look at our zoning map, this was spot zone. I understand why because mobile home parks are an allowable use within the MPD zoning district. So when they did I'm sure when they did the zoning map, they said, okay, well, multi-purpose district allows mobile home parks, we're going to make that MPD. But if someone were to challenge it, there is a challenge there that it could be spot zoning. Because it is perfectly, the standard is if you look at a zoning map and there's a bullseye, then it's a classic for spot zoning. And this could be a classic for spot zoning. But that has really nothing to do with this because the mobile home park is a existing, pre-existing non-conforming use. So, well, it's not a non-conforming use because it's conforming under the MPD. Sorry.
So let me ask you a question. Can this board modify the MPD zoning? And what is allowable use in it?
This board can legislate anything they wish with the zoning ordinance, as long as you follow the standards of, just as if you were to make any zoning ordinance change, you publish, you write the ordinance, you send it to the planning commission, or you guys authorize it for advertisement, it goes to the planning commission, it goes to our, Chester County Planning Commission goes to our planning commission, you get your recommendations and letter from the planning commission, Chester County, comes back to you, you hold a hearing, and you either pass it or deny it.
So,
But you could make changes to the MPD, sure.
yeah. So I think one option for the board to consider is changing the MPD zoning, what's permitted in it.
Well, I think one thing you want to be concerned about if you do that is that if you change the MPD and you eliminate commercial and industrial uses, you have now made all of the pre-existing ones non-conforming.
So give me a
which would
solution.
not be a good
Give me
idea.
a solution that involves addressing this particular situation.
Well, I really wouldn't have one. I mean, obviously you have.
Can they come in and the new owners come in, can they like say, all right, we're going to change this to warehouses and make everybody get out? Just like that, they can do that, right?
Well, I'm not an attorney.
I know.
But I'm sure there are certain rights provided to both the property owner and to you through the Mobile Home Act.
The Mobile Home Act?
Yeah.
What's that? Something new to me.
No, it's real.
So, but again, I'm not an attorney. But if they were, any property owner has the right to sell the property, and if they sell it to someone who can do something that conforms with our zoning ordinance and our subdivision land development ordinance, they have every right to tell whoever's there, sorry, I own the property now, you have to vacate.
Get out. Wow.
I mean, again, it goes through the planning process. As so,
The solution is to change the zoning. For the mobile home park.
So I was asking a question, is it possible to change the zoning to permit mobile homes but not industrial uses?
There you go.
it is, but then you're going to make all of those other
Well, I'm
areas
talking
of
about specific
non-conforming.
location. I want to talk about rezoning this specific location. Is that an option?
That would definitely be spot zoning.
And then what are the ramifications of having all of the previous
We're not
MPD
talking
districts
about-
non-conforming?
Well, that means every time one of those people need to go do something, they're going to be to the zoning hearing. And actually, if you make those properties non-conforming, those property owners probably have a legal right to come after the township for making their property non-conforming. The goal of zoning is to.
This situation is different because you're talking about families and people.
And you're talking
In a
about
community.
owning your own home.
And other places that are zoned similar are not established as such. So we're not talking that. We're talking about us. And we're asking, can you have rezoned for mobile home usage only for there? Since it's been in, I don't know how old it has been, for the mobile home park itself to have the zoning that you have established for it, that village, that
Right, instead of
property.
keeping it as an MPD, could it be a different kind of zoning, but then it's still spot zoning?
It wouldn't be spot zoning.
So is that possible?
I would just suggest to the board that there's all kind of options that you have. It's not something we're going to vet out tonight. We have to look at it comprehensively with the entire ordinance in hand. You have to look at where the other properties that are zoned MPD are. You can't have a parcel of land that the only use that's allowed is the mobile home park. But there are options that the board can explore, and I think they hear the residents' concerns and understand the plight that you would have if it was changed. So I would suggest that we have off the public meeting discussions about your options and possibilities, and and talk to the board about it.
Well, that certainly sounds like a
Yeah.
good suggested action. Thank you, Chris, and we will engage with you on that.
Okay, so we would talk with you about it, and you would,
No, I will discuss it with the board and with the zoning officer and the staff. You understand what your
and
goals
inform
are?
us on our options?
Well, it's not your option, it's the township's option of how they zone the ordinance,
Okay.
how they zone the property.
Okay,
But with your goals in mind, sir.
yes, yes, well, I full-heartedly believe that you guys are on our side 100%. But when you start talking big money developers coming in, whatever, however much money they got or whatever it takes, they can get it done if they want to.
No, I think that there's a lot of, like Kristen, like Ms. Camp said, I think there's a lot of options that the board might be able to look into, and we're, like I am on your side, and we do have your best interest in mind, and we're
Yes.
gonna explore that.
And I thank you all for that.
Mr. Zhang, you wanted to make another comment?
He just answered for me. I just wanted to thank everybody, first of all, for letting us in here first, letting us take some of your time up, and I especially want to thank John and Ashley, Sean, Hugh, I didn't meet you before, Hugh, and Robin, for coming out to the park, talking to everybody. I want to thank everybody for coming here, too. This means everything to us.
Thank you for
You
coming.
folks to sit there and listen to us and try to help us, and that goes for everybody here. I appreciate it from all of you.
And I just want to say the times that I did come out and meet with you folks, I was quite impressed by the sense of community that you folks exhibited across all ages, ethnicities, languages even. I was quite impressed. You guys have something special there.
Our own.
We feel we do. And, well, I mean, just to re-echo, summarize what Tom was saying before, we're at the precipice of a large buyer with a lot of money coming into the picture, a buyer who's in the business of building apartments, multi-story apartments, and we just hope, that you can understand our concern, all right? That even though no formal petition may have been submitted at this point, we're all, it's not a happy Christmas.
We know where it's going.
Yeah.
With the new buyer.
Yeah, it really seems like it's going that way. So we just hope you understand our deep concern.
We've received a message loud and clear. You've heard two actions for us tonight. One is that if there is a petition that comes before us, you will be the first people to know about it, so you can get involved with the public process. And the second action was that the board will be having conversations with staff and council on what options we have to maintain the community.
Just want to keep our homes. Am I right?
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate it, you being here, and we'll take a 5-minute break just so you can decide.
But one final, there's no point then in coming on the 14th or the 21st?
No, there's nothing on it. Well, nothing on the agenda because that's not tonight.
Okay.
Either day, the 14th or the 20th.
Yeah, nothing. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Coming
Yeah, I know, but I understand.
Hey Doug, that guy said you got a problem with his cars, come see him. I called him up, I said, Doug White doesn't want you to put your patrol cars in front of his pedestrian. He said, tell Doug White, come see me, he's got a problem. Nah, I reached out to him, I told him I can't force you to relocate those. And some of the business owners there would appreciate if you would relocate your cars so that it doesn't look like there's police activity.
There's only certain things that you can do. There's other things you can do on signs.
Oh, sure. Oh,
I'm not the right person to like I said, there's other things that we can do on the side, but we have to do. Anything we can do on the side. Stop that. I mean, reasonable out in the building. The only reason why they would have building is probably
I got stuff behind me. You travel slow.
I hope everyone gets up because 50 families. We don't have where we go. We have kids.
I'm not the right one to answer those.
Yeah, you did. We just like the language.
Yeah, I did. Good time.
Thank you. I'm really lucky. That's why,
I know.
I told this to my... I'm always my language.
Now, I see you could have done it. Maybe you could line up in the future. I understand. So sometimes you talk about anything here, find out.
Jill? Hi.
I wish I could have all your answers, but I don't. We'll see what we can
Try to reconvene the meeting, regular order of business, please. If you're going to leave, could you please exit the doors, close it behind you.
Until we let Ashley bang it in. I did not. You didn't do it? Attention, yeah, hear ye.
All right, so we're going to restart the meeting here. Just looking at the agenda. Is there any changes or suggestions to the agenda at this point, given where we are?
Yes, I would like to make a suggested change to the board, that we move item 10, discussion of West Goshen rental permits and a possible rental ordinance amendment, to our next agenda item. We have members of the audience who are here regarding this issue. I'd like to address that next so that they don't have to wait till the end of the meeting, if that's all right with the board.
So you're making a motion to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you, John. We're going to amend the agenda and move agenda item number 10 to be the next order of business. Is there any questions or comments from the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Okay, very good. So up next is discussion of West Goshen rental permits and a possible rental ordinance amendment. Ashley or Kristen, would you like to introduce the subject?
Sure, I'll just introduce briefly. It came to my attention recently, a resident brought to my attention that there have been incidences in the township where private property owners may be living next to rental properties, specifically student housing rental properties. And in those instances, it may occur that sometimes the students are on their best behavior, or certain just standards of living aren't being followed. And I wanted to have a discussion with the board about possible, and with Kristen, about possible options that the township might have to adjust our rental permit ordinances. I know that in Westchester, Kristen brought to our attention in the borough, they've created a system of points that sort of works against a property owner of a rental property, right? So if there are so many infractions or they're cited so many times that a permit would then be revoked. I know that there are legal rights.
Yeah, it's not that easy. So let me explain what happened. So obviously the borough has a lot of student homes and it's a problem population. There's another, and I'm forgetting the municipality in the Commonwealth that did it, but it might be State College, I'm forgetting it. But anyway, we modeled the borough's ordinance after an ordinance that was already adopted in the Commonwealth, where student homes are just like your ordinance. Your zoning ordinance is modeled after Westchester Borough's in terms of a student home is a separate classified use under your zoning ordinance. So the student homes in West Goshen are right now only permitted, I believe, in your R4 district. If there's any that exist in your R3 district, they are lawful non-conforming homes for the most part. They were there before the ordinance was changed to identify a student home as a separate and distinct use, separate and apart from a single-family dwelling. So from a zoning perspective, those student homes are allowed to continue to exist as long as the property owner does not abandon that use. Abandoning the use doesn't mean just stop using it. They have to have an actual intent to say, I'm going to stop using it as a student home. So what the borough has done is, as part of their property maintenance code, they require every property that's rented to have a rental permit. And that rental permit has to be issued every year. It's an annual rental permit. There's a registration process every July. If you own a rental property, you need to fill out the application. You need to designate a local agent who is there to get service of notices of violation and any lawsuits that would be filed. There is a point system. So if there are code violations or crimes committed at the property and the tenants of these rental properties are in violation of either the crimes or code. So for example, public drunkenness, that's a crime, that's not a code violation. Disorderly conduct, that is a crime, not a code violation. But if there's a property maintenance violation, a trash violation, I don't know if you'll help me out on some other code violations, things that your code department enforces. Noise. That could also be, there might be also a crime, but you also have your own noise regulation. So it crosses over, and it depending on the severity of the violation, if it's something like, you didn't take your trash cans back in time, that would be assigned. It has to be after they're found guilty by the district court of that violation. The borough then keeps a tabulation of the points. The lower severity violations get 1 point, higher severity violations would have 2 or 3 points. In the course of 1 calendar year, if a rental property accumulates 10 points, there is a public hearing process. Because a rental permit is a property interest you cannot take away without due process of law. So there's a property hearing or a process, which they've never gotten to that process yet. And the intended purpose of it was so that the owners have some accountability for the behavior of their tenants. And that's really what it was put into place to do. So that it also, it's a very lengthy ordinance. It requires the owners to include in their leases this particular ordinance, and so that tenants understand that this is a potentiality, that they would potentially, because the borough can't require a landlord to evict somebody. That's the lease, just like we were talking about the private agreement of sale, a lease is a private contract between two parties. The township can't say, landlord, you have to go evict this person. The tenant has rights under their lease, and actually the Landlord-Tenant Act is very protective of tenants. But what it can do is it can say that if so many violations occur and you get so many points, we can have a hearing and potentially revoke your rental permit. Now, we wouldn't have it probably be revoked pending the term of a lease. So a lease would have to, you'd probably have to let the lease play out, and most of those leases are year-to-year leases for student homes. Again, we've never gotten to that point where we've actually revoked it, but I think it has had some positive implications in terms of owners being a little more diligent about choosing their tenants and being accountable and familiar and taking proactive measures to, if things happen, and start to put into their leases themselves that if they get certain violations, that's the default of their lease, that they can then evict them. So we try to encourage the landlords to put things into their leases that, again, if the tenants get in problems with the borough, in terms of code violations and crimes, then the landlord can exercise their own rights and get those problem tenants out. It was a fairly lengthy process to put that ordinance in place, but I'm happy to send you guys an example of it, a copy of it, and then I would ask that, maybe get in touch with somebody at the borough they have 2 inspectors, that's their full-time job, is they do annual inspections of the rental properties. I don't think you have nearly as many student rentals for sure, I know you don't have. So I don't know if you need to go as far as the borough went, but maybe somewhere in between. But that's what they did.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. And that's sort of my concern here, just speaking openly with the board, is at what point is the behavior of, especially a student housing, rental, that's affecting the neighbors living in that neighborhood? I mean, at what point is that too out of control that we would need to do something like this?
Well, can I ask, has this property been cited? I mean, are they in violation of code and crimes?
They have been in the past, as far as I know, yes.
Where's this property supposed to be? Where's the rental place?
The property is is close to the Roslyn neighborhood, so it's
Like
in that
Church Street?
Yeah, South High.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't want to out.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable giving my address, but I've been a resident here at West Goshen for 17 years. Purchased my home, and the property near my home was not a college rental property at the time. Then was sold to a gentleman who turned it into a college rental property, so it was grandfathered in, unfortunately. So everything since that sale has been a bit of a nightmare for us at our property. Property damage. There's been noise violations. I've gone to court twice with 2 of the students, not current ones. They were found guilty. There was a fire violation, and the fire marshal came out. But mostly just the usual property damage, noise, just quality of life, really. Just want to be able to enjoy my home, and it's a nuisance. And accountability would be awesome. Point system, I would be extremely grateful for, and really anything else that anyone would be open to suggesting or supporting our community with, because we are a tight-knit community on that end of town. And a lot of the folks that are living there have been there 30, 40 years. And so having a peaceful environment is important to us. And to feel safe. And just be able to be in your yard or go to bed because you have a job and not be awakened, multiple times a night. So yes, I would be open to the point system coming over to our township if it would be possible. Thank you.
Chris, I have a couple of questions and comments. So you said a lengthy process to introduce the point system, etc. What do you mean by lengthy? What was the issue?
Just going through the ordinance and making sure. I mean, there's a very active landlords association in the borough, so getting their input to make sure that they bought into it and didn't appeal it, quite honestly, to make sure that it wasn't overstepping the rights of landlords who have sued the borough on numerous occasions. So it was just, not just cookie cutter taking it from the other municipality in the Commonwealth that adopted it and tailoring it to make it meet the borough's needs and recognizing the student rental population within the borough. So the process from the beginning of the drafting, the negotiation, the discussions among, the different council and the staff members to make sure that they had the administrative support to administer it, basically.
Yeah. Just to understand a little better the context of the example of the issues this lady faces. When you say a point system, you mentioned 10 points. So a noise violation is what, 2 or 3 points?
Yeah, the ordinance spells it out. I don't know each one off the top of my head. They literally in the property maintenance code under this section have they didn't take every single possible violation of the code, but they did the ones that affect quality of life to the 2 residents around, and then assigned a point system. So, yeah, for example, something very serious would be given, I think the maximum is 3 points for any one violation, if they're adjudicated guilty at the district court level.
Yeah.
And then the code department keeps track on a property by property basis as those violations are adjudicated guilty, or, whatever property address it is, they keep a record of that. And in any one calendar year, and again, it's never gotten to the point where they've gotten to 10 points for one property where they've had to hold a hearing to see whether or not the license, the rental permit could be revoked.
Which is probably a good thing, because like you said, it might have a positive effect on the tenant or the owner by saying, look, if there's a real consequence here, I'm going to choose my tenants wisely, and I'm going to put this in the lease and say, look, if you don't follow these requirements, then I can't rent to you. And I mean, it might have some positive effect for the people that live around those properties.
So just thinking out loud, so if a tenant has 2 noise violations, and again, you said they have to go through the whole process of being,
Go to the district court.
Go to the district court. I mean, how many, have we taken people to district court for the noise violations in these student housing situations? Have we ever done that even?
I went twice with 2 of the tenants.
2 of the tenants.
I mean, basically what happens is the police officer says to you, I cited them. Now, if you don't show up, they won't be, it gets thrown out. So I had to take time out of my work day, 2 separate occasions to show up, sit with the officer for support if I couldn't. They were found guilty, and, on 2 separate occasions, so.
I'm just trying to play out the idea. So if that was 2 separate occasions, presumably it was 2 different tenants, 2 different calendar years.
No, actually, in this instance,
it was the same one.
Yes.
And so, I guess where I'm going is it so even accepting that it can be a deterrent to making sure you select tenants who are presumably going to be less likely to cause these issues, if you do have a situation where that happens, to have 2 or 3 times of noise, be found guilty of it, it still would not score the 10 points. So I'm questioning whether the point system really is effective in dealing with a disruptive tenant, other than the deterrence factor. You said right now, at least in the borough, you have no example of someone actually getting up to the 10 points.
Right. But I can't, it serves as a deterrent. It absolutely serves as a deterrent. I think the landlords have taken it more seriously to have discussions with their tenants in advance about what's appropriate behavior and what they didn't want to just continue to rely upon the borough code enforcement officers and the borough police.
Right.
They wanted the owners themselves to have remedies and enforcement mechanisms to get rid of bad tenants.
Very good.
Because if the owner realizes that they have a certain number of points before their permit would be revoked, and there is a noise violation, and there's 3 points right there, they have the opportunity to evict that tenant.
But I didn't, Sean, this is where I thought you were going. I thought you were going to say that it takes time, because it would take time to accumulate. Unless you have a property where every day or every weekend they're continuing to get violations.
I'm just trying to separate the idea of a single bad tenant still imposing the situation where you have to follow through with these noise violations. But once that's done once, perhaps that then influences the property owner to not have a repeat tenant like that in the future. So that's the benefit of it, is what I'm hearing you say.
Mm-hmm.
This gentleman at the back, you have a question? Do you mind coming?
My name's Ed Mayer. I'm from 3 Yorktown Avenue, and I'm a neighbor of Jill's. And I do believe my neighborhood is zoned R3. And in regards to student rentals, and let me just make sure I'm clear on this, it has to be zoned R4 to be a student rental, is that correct?
For a new one, for a new student home to come in, for a property that was not used as a student rental before the ordinance changed. Now you have to be located in the R4 district to allow students to reside in that dwelling unit.
Right, and I do believe in the borough right now, you can't even get a student rental permit anymore because they had a systemic problem with.
Well, it's from a zoning perspective. It's because the way they've zoned it, same thing. You have to get a special exception. You have to be you can't be within 400 feet of another student rental. So because of the number of non-conforming student rentals, it virtually no more would be permitted to come in.
Now, I guess the next question I have is if I have an R3 property like myself and Jill's property, that's R3, one can still rent that property, but not to a student.
Not to students.
Okay. How do we identify a property in R3 that's a rental that could be a student rental? There's no way of identifying. How do you verify that? There's no way. I guess my question is, we have a process in place for rentals, probably annual inspection, the lease, and looking at that. And I'll give you a case in point. 4 Yorktown Avenue. It's across the street from my house. Mr. Webb, I've met him before. The house was sold, I guess, maybe 2 years ago. The owner at that time said, yeah, we're going to move in such and such a time. They never moved in. It became a rental property. Okay? That's fine. I have no problem with rental properties. I'm a landlord myself in the borough. Where I have a problem is behavior of people and how they act in the property. In the case of across the street, we believed, I think Jill and I did, that there were students in there.
There was.
And there was. So one is, something's broken. Something's broken because they were able to get students in there. Number 2 is homecoming of, not this year, but last year, they had a big party. Look, I have no problem on homecoming, people having parties. I really don't. It's a special time for them. But when you start walking through the my 80-year-old neighbor's yard at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I see it, I'm calling the cops. And I call the cops, police, law enforcement. I expected 1 squad car and somebody to show up. I didn't expect 7 cars and a bunch of guys with masks on, and it looked like a SWAT team. And it was really interesting because the one officer said, why'd you call us? And I said, because I saw somebody walking around my neighbor's yard at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I guess my point is, like, how do we know and who's in there? You know, we can see things on a lease. We can go in the house on a yearly basis, which I hope we are from a code enforcement standpoint, checking smoke detectors and stuff like that. Because my concern is the behavior of most landlords, because I've seen it in the borough, is, and I don't want to stereotype, but is their eyes are closed, a lot of them, okay? They like making money, and a lot of the properties are run down. And I might be wrong, but I'm concerned that if a property gets into disarray, it becomes a life safety issue, not only for the tenants inside, because they're just tenants, but it also becomes a life safety issue for people next door, okay? And I'd like to, at some point in time, I'd like to understand that process.
Well, let's explore that now. So, Bill, how do we know whether a property is rented in the township in the R3 district? R3 development areas?
A new one, they would file a rental registration. If it's a new tenant, they get an inspection done. We do an inspection. If the tenants don't change, all they have to do is renew their annual registration. We don't inspect unless the tenant changes.
Okay.
There is a box on the application, whether it's student housing or not.
But I will add that if they check no, but the residents around believe they are students, we can do investigation like the zoning officer investigates any proposed, anybody that says there's a zoning violation going on. It's not that hard to figure out if students living there. They have...
it's up to the community.
It's not that hard.
Yeah. So
it can be proven. The township can send a notice of violation and then go to a zoning hearing board proceeding if the owner, appeals it and says, no, these aren't students. So it's really not that difficult of a case to prove if there's evidence from the neighbors that the tenants are in fact students. Right. So it is not hard to enforce and to get those students out.
Well, in the case of 4 Yorktown, when Ed had contacted me, the owner outright said, yeah, they're students. He didn't realize. Well, that was because he said his realtor didn't tell him any different. Well, I said, and my answer to every landlord is it's your responsibility to know the rules and regulations of which you're operating. So you should have called us before you moved those tenants in. So those folks even moved in without an inspection as well. But the way our system works is, you don't just write a citation. That's, you issue a notice of violation, they comply, and we gave them X amount of time to vacate the property. And I think it was at the end of the semester, because I think we it might have been towards the middle.
It was, I think it was identified in like September,
Okay.
and I think because of COVID, they had to till December, but the situations were a little different because of COVID and things like that, so a little more. I mean, I think the borough might have taken a harder line on it, just because of past experience.
The borough does have a harder line, but the borough also has more staff.
And many more students.
No, I understand that, and they've
The issue
suffered
was addressed
through.
when it was discovered, right? I mean, that's the answer was the issue was addressed when it was discovered. There are students living there now.
As far as we know, no.
No, because that question, I think Ms. DeBenny had contacted me, I think it was either Jill or Ed, after I think one of the students, or two of the students that were students, stayed, but the landlord provided us proof that they had graduated. So they're no longer students at that time.
Right.
So they were allowed to occupy the property.
I know your time's valuable, but regarding inspections, I know in the borough, and it's just regarding rentals. They have to be inspected yearly.
Our ordinance is not that way.
Is not that way.
Tenant change only. We would have to hire 2 or 3 more people
I know,
based on the number of apartment units that we have.
But that's really, I don't know. As a resident that lives right across it or next door to it, that concerns me. Because everybody does property maintenance and things of that nature, especially regarding the life safety stuff, differently. And I don't think in my opinion, from a code standpoint, and I know a little about code enough to be dangerous, it doesn't matter whether the lease changes or not. It's about the facility in the building. And don't you think you should be checking that annually?
I follow what the ordinance says. The ordinance says it's tenant change. A township that I worked for previously, if the tenant did not change, then we did it every 3 years. We would visit the property, but not annually. That would be just as well as if we went to everybody's house annually to check their smoke detectors.
No, that's.
But the ordinance is written that it's per tenant change.
This is different here because if I'm in my house as an owner, I am going to make sure I protect my family because we live under that roof, and that's my property. That's my value. If I'm a landlord and everybody behaves differently, and I'm using that property as a revenue stream, okay? And I'm putting people in there as tenants. Now, my tenants don't know from a mechanical standpoint, fire, smoke detectors, whatever, what kind of condition that building's in. Renewing on a lease seems to me kind of dangerous.
Okay, I think you've made your point on that
Okay.
at this point. So what I'd like to do is ask the board at this point whether there's an appetite to have us look at the kind of the ordinance that the borough has related to rentals and the permit and point process that Kristen described, and whether we believe that's something we want to adopt in West Goshen. Is the board like to comment on whether that was the direction we want to go?
Yeah, just get some examples and take a look at it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the second point was about whether the frequency of a rental inspection, whether it's in R3 or R4 or whatever else, is adequate. So it's a separate question that was raised.
I can, if you
Go ahead, Bill, what's your view?
I can say from my perspective, the student rentals pretty much do change annually. The property next to Ms. DeBenny changes annually, and we go out there annually. A lot of our rentals, I mean, the apartment complexes, every time the tenant changes, which those units flip a lot, but a lot of our single-family rental properties, they don't change that often, because these people are getting a single-family house in Westchester at a decent rate. So the single-family houses don't change very often. Maybe you look at that I don't know how to do that.
Give me a feel for the difference between when you inspect a student house, when a tenant changes, and when you've inspected an R3 single-family home and it changes. Do you see very few violations on the R3 single-family homes, or do you see lots with the student turnover ones? What's the kind of, what do you see when you do these inspections?
Our list is so basic, we see very few issues.
Are they life safety basic questions, things you're looking for?
Yes, just as we had proposed with the resale ordinance, we expanded on that list, on the rental list more. I mean, we're looking at smoke detectors, addresses on the house, basic life safety things, handrails. We don't really have that many problems.
Okay. All right, so what's the board's view as to whether there's any need to revisit the frequency of inspection of properties that are being rented?
It seems to me like it's adequate the way it is when you just described it.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'm satisfied.
Very good. So the action from this agenda item was for a person to share the examples. Thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item. I think we're back on the original list now. So discussion and possible approval of ordinance number 14, 2021, which is miscellaneous zoning ordinance. Just give me a second, Kristen, to find my spot.
Sure.
So the draft of this ordinance was originally discussed at the October 5th board workshop. It was reviewed again at the October 19th board meeting and approved for advertisement to adopt at the meeting tonight. And I believe from those minutes I saw that it was going to be reviewed by the Chester County Planning Commission and the West Goshen Township Planning Commission at their November meeting. So my questions are, was there any input from those two reviews, and is there anything else to report on it, on the update that's in front of us tonight?
No, other than just to make a point for the minutes to reflect that we did advertise this as a public hearing in the Daily Local on November 23rd and November 30th. I sent a copy of the ordinance for public inspection to the Law Library and Daily Local. I'm going to read all this. County Planning Commission issued a review letter on November 10th, and they did point out there were some cross-references to other sections of the ordinance that I did go back and change, because we had taken some things out of 5710 because they only applied to college uses or university uses. So when I did that, some of the cross-references were wrong. So I went back and changed those cross-references and corrected those section references. And then your Planning Commission reviewed it on November 9th, 2021 and recommended approval.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the ordinance number 14, 2021?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Robin was second, Chris. Is there any board questions or comments? Final board questions or comments? Are there any public comments or questions? Okay, ready to take a vote. All in favor of adoption say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Very good, thank you. Next agenda item is continued discussion of the 2022 budget, outstanding items from the November 16th, 2021 presentation. And just for a reminder, there are three issues that we need to decide tonight to complete the 2022 budget preparation so that we're able to vote on budget adoption at the next meeting. The three issues are the contributions to Goshen Fire Company, the contributions to Good Fellowship Ambulance Company, and consideration of waiving a transfer of funds to the post-retirement health benefit accounts. And there's one other thing I need to discuss after we've been through those, and that's a request from Mike Moffat to adjust the expenses in the sewer fund in light of new information. So we'll cover that as well. But let's start with the contributions to Goshen Fire Company and Good Fellowship Ambulance. Casey provided a status to the board about what is currently in the draft budget that has been advertised, and that is for Good Fellowship, the continuation of the same amount of 2021's contribution, which is $86,980, and similarly for Goshen Fire, the amount of 2021's contribution was $205,532, Both of the organizations have requested higher amounts than that, but that's what we have got in our preliminary budget. Does a member of the board wish to start the conversation? Are the board members happy with what we currently have in our draft budget, or do they suggest it be changed?
I'm comfortable with what's in the draft budget.
Thank you, Ashley. Any other comments?
I would support the same.
Same. John?
Well, I feel comfortable with it. I wouldn't have a problem with moving the contribution to Goshen Fire to what they originally had requested last year, which was $215, up from the $205 that we finally approved, because we did approve that amount of $215, but then we took $10,000 away from that amount to give to the Fame Fire Company for part of their building fund, which we never actually gave to them. So I would go with 215 for the Goshen Fire. I would feel comfortable with that.
Very good, thanks. I'm just looking for my notes on this. So the one thing I did on this, we had a lengthy discussion maybe more than once on this topic, and I went back and looked at the call volumes for 2021 that are projected for this year for Westchester Fire, Goshen Fire, Goshen EMS, and GFAC. And based on the calls, the EMS service, the fire company that provides the fire service and EMS is underfunded relative to the call volume compared to Westchester Fire and GFAC. So I support what you just said, John, in that we should at least give the Goshen Fire what we'd originally agreed to last year, which is the $215,532. I do think the board needs to spend some time in 22 reviewing this whole situation, because, as I said, the call volumes in terms of the service being provided to residents in the township do not reflect really the amounts that are being given to the individual organizations. So we don't have, we haven't done any analysis or revisited that approach. We're still in a contractual agreement with Westchester Fire Company anyway. I think that the whole situation begs for some revisiting as we look at 2022 and also the distribution of the funds that we get from the state of what fire insurance.
Yeah. If
So
I would just,
that has nothing to do with what they have in the distribution of money from the fireman's relief, and has nothing to do with operations.
But we have discussion over how we allocate funds if we believe that the organizations are not being funded appropriately from our own revenue, correct? Well, we did have discussion about being able to adjust those amounts per fire company, so we do have some discretion over it. Okay, anyway, it's not on the agenda for tonight. So what I just basically said was I support John's position that we should give Goshen Fire $215,532 and stay with the same amount for good fellowship at $86,980. John, would you like to make a motion?
yes, I'll make that motion.
Then I'll second it. So is there any other board discussion on it?
I really think that GFAC deserves a bump.
Okay, so you're not going to support the motion then, or?
I have to support the motion because we got to get it.
Well, you can make your own motion. You can, not vote for this one and then make your own motion.
I'm practical.
Okay. Is there any other board discussion on it?
Well, I just like would say, as an addition to this conversation we're having, I think we need to have a conversation with Goshen Fire and move towards a contractual relationship with them, much like we have with the Westchester Fire Company, because they need to get a better handle, and we need to get a better handle on what their needs are and come up with an appropriate figure. But again, that's outside of our vote for tonight, but we need to do that and put that on the table for next year.
Okay. Is there any public comment or questions? Doug?
Is the 215 for Goshen Fire represent their requested amount for this year?
It is not their requested amount for this year. It's less than that.
Oh, okay.
Their requested amount was good, John.
$256,739 was what they requested for this year.
Okay, so and last year, last year they could not have the fair. So they requested extra because they couldn't have the fair. This year they had the fair. And was that taken into account the extra revenue that they got from the fair, the net amount, in the decision for the 215?
So Chief Everhart was here, it was the last meeting or the meeting before, and presented kind of a high-level overview of the financial situation. And despite the revenue from the fair, they still needed the same order of magnitude as we gave them in 21 to be close to not being in the red. I think he said it's still in the red.
Because of other financial problems.
Just because of generally the revenue not being where it was 2 years ago, and because of expenses continuing to go up, and less revenue from reimbursements or whatever. So.
Yeah, we had to ask for additional information from them. We asked it from Casey, and I don't know, never got a response back from them. Mainly, there's several other municipalities which they service besides us. I wanted to know what did they receive from them, and then we can start comparing how much did they receive from these other municipalities, and what kind of call responses do they make to these different municipalities to try to get a feel of whether or not we were in the right ballpark or not with our contribution. Well, we never got that information from them. So.
Any other questions?
Sean, I'd like to speak.
Sure, go ahead.
You didn't go here. I'm Kim Holman. I'm the Executive Director for Good Fellowship Ambulance. Hugh, I appreciate you advocating a little bit for us. I'll speak on behalf of Goshen because they have an ambulance company as well as the fire department, and for our ambulance company. So West Goshen has 2 ambulance companies that service you. That is unique, slightly. Most townships are going to single source. I mentioned this to Sean a little bit about something that we can do. And as I've told you before, I think it's wholly responsible for EMS to kind of get consolidated and make this as inexpensive as possible. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of things that go into this. So for me, our expenses are skyrocketing. We are literally dying in EMS in Pennsylvania. Not only am I Executive Director of Good Fellowship, but I serve on 2 boards. That's on the Ambulance Association of Pennsylvania, and I'm also on the PASH Council, which actually goes right to the state EMS organization. And I also serve on a national organization called NAEMT, and I do their EMS advocacy. So I consider myself a subject matter expert on what you're going through. So kind of taking my Good Fellowship hat and putting it over here, I'm also a West Goshen resident at 217 Oxford. I'm serviced by Goshen Fire Company and Goshen EMS. This is very passionate for me, and I'm telling you as I'm standing here, I just came out of an insurance premium meeting. Our insurance premium is going up by $23,000 next year. I don't have that. We've gone through several presentations where I tell you our insurance reimbursement is $1.8 million, our expenses are $2.5. Our labor expense is $1.6 million. Grant spoke to you last month and told you his is $2 million. We are in a wage war in EMS, not only against each other, but against the grocery store and the Wawa. So you guys see what's happening with the wage. So not only is it that, but then we're now having scarcity of a resource, which is the certified professional. I advocate quite heavily in Harrisburg and even in DC about Medicare and Medicaid and then private insurance. We had the House bill that you guys fully supported me on that in Harrisburg. That got held up in the insurance committee. It's not going anywhere. So the private insurance companies don't pay us direct, they pay the patient. And then trying to chase a patient for the bill, now we've got 180 to 360-day turnaround if we get it at best. And that's the only place we get 100% of possible revenue reimbursement. Medicaid is tracked at a 10% reimbursement rate. Medicare is tracked at a 30 to 40% reimbursement rate, depending on what you're doing. There's no movement on that end. And then I am regulated on the backside about who I have to respond to, when I have to respond, how I have to respond, and who when. So they manage my expense, and the government manages my revenue. So when we sit here and tell you we need the money, I'm telling you, Going from 86 to 91 is going to make a difference for us next year to continue to serve at the level we do. And that's still, as I've told you, a shortfall for me of still $350,000. I'm not asking you to fully fund the gap. I'm doing the hustle. On our website, you can go to GuideStar, you can look at our 990, all of our financials are there. I've offered to show you our budget. We need the help, and I can speak for that from Good Fellowship. We need the money. I do have ways that I think the township can kind of consolidate and make some savings in this, but the two organizations, Goshen, Westchester Fire Department, and Good Fellowship would have to come together, and I think there's a way we can do that, but you guys are ultimately responsible for assigning who responds and then the funding. So I will work with you. I meet you halfway. I do the hustle. I do the grants. I do the fund drive. I do, we do all these crazy things. Goshen has the fair, which was awesome this year. They sold out, lots of money. It was one of the best attended fairs I think they've had in forever. It was great, right?
The weather helped.
Oh, it was beautiful. So, but that's fickle. That is a fickle funding source, and it is not finite. So you guys are going to be our only salvation. And I'm telling you as I'm standing here, next year, those numbers are going to be higher. And there's nothing I can do about that. I'm hustling, I promise. There's nothing I can do about that. So to them, I can't say to you, and without them sharing the numbers, I can't advocate for the 256, the 215, 205, whatever number you want to go with them. But I can tell you, I need my number. And I have demonstrated, I think, over and over again, and I will continue to do so, to be transparent and share with you every dollar that you give us and where it goes.
Awesome, thank you,
Thank
Kenny.
you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can I just have a question? You mentioned that the insurances don't pay you directly, but if you contract with them and participate with them, would you get direct reimbursement?
Yeah, so here's the trick about that. That's a good one. And what we do is we analyze that, or review that every year and go through the analysis. So what happens is, let's say our volume's 6,000 calls for Easy Back. If we contract with the private insurance companies, what they do with that is they half the reimbursement rate. So if it's an $800 transport, they'll go, if you contract with us, we'll pay you $400 direct.
That's what happens.
But that's it. So you either get 50% of your money right away, or you battle for 100%. And because Medicare, Medicaid, workers' comp is only 50%, MVC, unless you're a trauma, is only 50%. So all the other payers are less than 100%. Your only shot at 100% reimbursement on a bill is private insurance and self-pays. And the self-pay is 16% return. So if I'm billing Tina direct, only 16% of the time does she pay me in full. I mean, we have people on payment plans at $25 a month. So, I mean, the return on that, I'm not covering anything. So, and that's a great question. And these are things that we would love to tell you all about, but we're not whining or complaining or saying, just take care of us. I mean, it really is a horrible business to be in, and it truly is failing. So it's going to land here, and we want to work with you on it, but when we ask for it, we need it.
Thank you.
What I've observed over the years is that the volunteers have become less and less of a portion of it. When I was active in GFAC, which is 30 years ago and more, we were mostly volunteers. There was only 2 paid people in the whole operation. And now it's substantially, and you can comment on that.
So I've been there at Good Fellowship since 1994. So I'm not new to the game. My dad was legacy firefighter EMT, volunteer in Virginia. I came in as a volunteer, and I was a volunteer all the way up until 2016 when I took over as executive director. And I will tell you, in that time frame, it was about a 60% volunteer, 40% paid when I started there in 94. And it has slowly progressed into almost like an 80-20, I would say 80 paid, 20% volunteer. Good Fellowship has one of the strongest volunteer EMT workforce today because of our education institute, because of our call volume. We have a neat mix of call volumes for people that want to see that kind of stuff. But I will tell you, that is waning. Most people are going to tell you that. And then what else is happening is even when they come down from our training institute, go right into the system, which is great, what's happening is because of the wage war and the scarcity of resource of the certified personnel, they're not even graduating the class. They don't even have their EMT number yet, their paramedic number yet, and they're getting offers for hire. So they're not going to volunteer if they've got 3 employers knocking down the door. They don't even have the card yet.
So, Kim, how much are you asking? How much is Good Fellowship asking for?
I think you were saying 86, but I think Dax was 91 or something.
91,795.
And we base that actually on a funding formula. So it's
No, I believe you.
clear.
Listen,
Yeah.
I think you've made a great case for yourself and for Good Fellowship. And believe me, I've had this conversation with Sean and John, and we're thinking, because we're strapped for money too, right? We're in a crisis too in the township. And the only way that we'd be able to get more money is by raising taxes, right? And we're trying to do our best to allocate funds where they're needed. And so I believe you, and you've sold me, and I would like to give you that money. And I'm asking the board where we're going to get that money. So now we have to take it for something else, right? And so what I'm saying is, where are we taking it from? I mean, that's the reality of, well, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and I, you know, I would be overstepping, but taking my fellowship hat over here and being the subject matter expert, there was a strategic plan done by the county. They put money into this to say, sorry, how the hell are we going to save fire and EMS, right? Like, what are we going to do? And there's a lot of solutions and suggestions in there. But I will tell you, being devil's advocate and telling on my own people, we have some work to do on our side about consolidating. I believe, and this is a personal belief, it is silly to have 2 organizations, 2 fire departments, 2 ambulance companies. You don't have 2 trash services here, right? I think there's savings in economies of scale. My background, I dual majored at Westchester University. I have an economics degree and a finance degree. So that happens first for me. And then I went to nursing school, had the EMT stuff. But when I look at this as a business plan, the ambulance company, first off, I would never be in that business. That's stupid. But secondly, if I'm trying to manage it into the future, it is not having 3 different companies serving 1 township, all of us having different asks every single year. What makes up your money? What makes up your money? Fire funding is different than EMS funding.
And so I guess that's a conversation that you guys need to have with each other to figure out. And then,
Yeah, the township has to be involved in that too, absolutely.
so yeah, and that's the problem, actually, because I said for 5 years, I've been trying to get us to partner together, the organization. And again, telling all my people, there's a lot of fiefdom, there's a lot of kingdom, there's a lot of this is my land, there's a lot of ego and pride, which benefits us to getting the trucks out, right? So you don't want to kill that. But there is a point where economy, we cannot expect, as the resident, we cannot expect West Goshen Township to be able to handle a $750,000 ask each year without having to go into a fire tax, or without having to go into some kind of tax as a resident, right? So, and me, being the resident, is saying, listen, ambulance people, get your act together. We can do this more efficiently, and the ask is less. We stave off the fire tax. That's my goal.
well, Kim, we need you. So,
Well, and I told Casey, I told Casey, I'm kind of almost going to quit this profession and just be a township consultant. But, I mean, there is a solution here that doesn't involve a $750,000 ask. But the township, unfortunately, you guys are probably going to have to force that conversation. And you can force it because you're the one that writes the resolution, you're the one that designates the service, and you're the one that funds the services on asks. So unfortunately, it falls back to you to kind of make that decision together. But I do think you need to make it in an educated way. And we are willing to give you that data, especially objective data. I highly suggest you ask the county for your call data, because then you're not getting it from me, you're not getting it from Goshen, you're not getting it from Westchester Fire Department. You're getting it from an unbiased source, and you can look at the responses that occur in your township. And then you can kind of look at it and say, what do we need to make this response work? And as Hugh has said before, your ISO rating. You don't want to affect your insurance premium. There's a lot of stuff that you need to factor into it, but I think we need to look at it.
okay.
Awesome, thank you.
No problem.
So we have a motion, does anybody want to amend the motion?
Yeah, I'll amend the motion.
Well, okay, so John made the motion, right?
No, don't say it. I thought you made the motion.
I seconded it. John made the motion.
I made a motion for this to go to the wire, for 215.
Right.
It's a cell phone, way too close to someone's. So just, if you're not using your mic, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, John, you either have to amend your motion or withdraw it unless you want us to vote on it. Hang on.
Well,
Were you persuaded by Kim, and do you want to, or are you happy with what you've just kept the motion? We can still vote on it.
This deal with the Goshen Fire Company, right, the 215 for the Goshen Fire. That motion's on the table, let's go ahead and vote on that.
Okay. And I'm still seconding the 215, so is there any other public comment on the Goshen Fire? All right, so we're ready to take a vote. So all in favor of $215,532 for Goshen Fire Company contribution in 22, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, passed. So now we need a separate motion for GFAC.
I'll make the motion to fulfill their request of $91,795.
$795.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Robert. Any other board comments or questions? Any public comment or questions? Okay, ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Very good.
They're lucky to have you.
I've just been doing it my whole
You
life.
must be great grant money.
Yeah.
It'll be wonderful at that. You got 500,000 to go with that.
Persuasive. It really is. You need a fourth profession. I better watch out. You're very good.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot for me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
But it's just, like I said, it's my whole life. I mean, literally my whole life, and it came from my dad too. He passed last year, so I'm in church.
No.
It means a lot to me. No one does right. Company is up. I want to talk to you.
Well, thank you, Ken. I do hear your plea, and I do think we need, as a township management board, to look at this whole situation in 22 and decide what we're going to do to both look at efficiency of service and stable funding situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Might be a cog issue, though.
We discussed it today. We discussed it today.
And we have presented before the COG,
Yep.
because we believe in it that strongly. Like, I think it was
I would like,
pre-COVID.
3 years ago. Yeah.
I do think this board and staff can be active and take the lead on this, because my view of the cog is that sometimes somebody needs to take the bull by the horns and get going with something, otherwise it just becomes.
But everybody has the same issue. I mean,
It's across the board.
economies of scale needs to be looked at.
Okay, back to the budget. We have, and that was the first 2 or 3 items to decide tonight. The third one was consideration of waiving a transfer of funds to the post-retirement health benefit accounts. And just as a reminder on that, the township has a couple of funds that are, the current balances, if I can find my numbers in here. Actually, I don't have the numbers, but there's kind of about $1 million.
1.65 million in the police officers and 1.887 million in the non-uniform post-retirement.
So previous boards have funded these accounts, and the intention was that this money would be used to pay health benefits for retirees prior to reaching Medicare eligibility age.
Correct.
Casey's explained how the actual uptake of this benefit is not at the actuarial assumptions, which is a worst case that everybody retires as soon as they're available and then they take advantage of the benefit. Because people don't necessarily work through to their retirement age, they may leave the township, they may retire later than anticipated for their earliest eligibility, and they may decide not to take health benefit because they're doing something else with coverage that's for them and their spouse or whatever. So at this point, there's the option for the board not to add funds to the account based on the actuarial numbers because of the actual benefit uptake being less. So that's the explanation of what the issue is before the board. The numbers are $171,079 for the general fund and $60,443 for the sewer fund. Is there any board discussion or a motion that anyone would like to make at this point?
I'll make a motion
To
to,
not fund?
yes.
I'll second.
So Vanessa made the motion to not fund the OPEB accounts for 22. John has seconded. Any other questions? You had a concern before? Okay. Any public comments or questions? Okay, all ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Very good, thank you. There is one other budget item to bring to your attention. Mike Moffett provided a memo to the board indicating that as the new phosphorus removal system startup that occurred in November has progressed, he is looking at different numbers that he had originally anticipated when he prepared the budget for material called polyaluminum chloride. This is a key material that's used in the precipitation of solids from the wastewater that removes the phosphorus in the new system. Combination of 17% increase in the volume of this chemical that he's using, but more importantly, a substantial increase in the price, 52%. So it's another example of inflation hitting material costs, supply costs of all kinds. And it is the chemical that has been used in the proof of this, the underwritten proof by the equipment provider to reach the target amount, so we can't change it at this point, otherwise we'll lose the performance guarantee from the vendor. So at least for the purposes of budgeting in a conservative way, he is asking that the board consider an increase from the current budget of $281,000, because that is the net effect of the volume of price increase on the budget. The sewer fund, I believe, has a budget surplus currently, which was intended to be used for continuing funding of the authority's capital program. So really at this point, it's a request to say we would like to modify the sewer fund expense side of the budget by this amount. So we need to use this material. Of course, he will optimize it, hopefully reduce the amount. Maybe we can find an alternative that's a lower price, but we don't know that at this point. So for conservative purposes of ensuring the budget reflects what we know, he's asking to put it in. Is there any board questions or comments? He has made a motion to accept this change to the expense budget for the sewer fund that is different from the advertised budget. Is there a second? I'll second the motion.
Also, we should add to that, if I may, also he's also requesting an increase in revenues of $90,000 as well.
Thanks for the reminder, John.
Yes, we might as well include that in the motion.
Yeah, we should. So the partner municipalities contribute to the operating costs of the sewer treatment system, and their share of this increased cost will be $90,000, which is recognized as a revenue. From the motion. I have my second. Okay, is there any other board comments or questions?
I mean, obviously, we don't have a choice, right? I mean, we need to buy this material.
We need to buy it. It's just a recognition of including the budget. Okay, my hope is it won't be as large as this number. It's very early days, and there's a lot of optimization. Are there any public comments or questions? Doug?
So, actually, it's great, we don't have a choice, but, so we can afford to do this, it wouldn't compromise any other aspect of the sewer maintenance?
No, this is exactly as the system is designed. It's using the right material. It's just that the volume that we're using right now is 17% higher than was anticipated. Like I said, he's trying to achieve certain targets on phosphorus removal, which is accomplishing with that volume increase. He hasn't fine-tuned the system. There's only one train in operation. When it all settles down, we could be back to where we started from. But the bigger impact is the fact that the price has jumped so substantially on this material. Now, until we've got it all lined out, we can't start investigating, well, is there a cheaper alternative to this material? So,
And you can't go to a different material because it'll void the warranty.
At this point, until performance proven, we can achieve what we have in our settlement agreement with the EPA.
Okay.
And hopefully it won't need as much. We don't know that.
Yeah.
It's all going to be trial and error right now. We're working on full-blown training.
Can I just ask a question after you vote? It's not quite related to what your motion is, but it's sewer revenue.
Okay, sure, hang on. Any other questions on this motion? All right, all ready to take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, thank you very much. So those are the outstanding budget items. I believe, Margie, just see if you can preempt the question here.
Yep.
There were two issues you raised at the last budget discussion we had. One was to do with the movement of funds into capital reserve from general fund, or whether this was not following the second-class township code. We have got Kristen looked at this again. I know she's looked at it before, and it's the issue. The fact is that because we approve a budget, hopefully next time we meet, those monies then are encumbered, meaning that the board has approved the transfer of them as part of the budget, so we can transfer them in the beginning of the year if we want or whatever. It's only unencumbered monies that cannot be transferred. And since we are
They can be
authorized...
transferred, they can be transferred in the first 3 months of the year.
Right, yeah. And
Okay.
in the past, we have done that in the first 3 months of the year.
And we could do it again this year because they are encumbered monies. Like we've authorized it to be used specifically to transfer to the capital reserve.
Did you discuss or consider taking some of the surplus from the general fund for 2021 and moving it, transferring it before the end of 2021?
No, because what we want to do is we have to finish the year, approve the budget at our final meeting, and we don't want to rush and move money we don't have to, and there's no reason to encumbered money. We can make it when we want in 2022.
Okay. All right, my question is unrelated to all that stuff. So I was looking at one of our partner, if you will, neighboring municipalities that their sewage flows to our system, West Whiteland specifically, and their contribution to West Goshen is roughly, let's just call it $1 million. It might be 1.1. In their budget, they specify 600,000 of that is for sewer operations, and 400 of that is for sewer capital expense. So my question is, when they submit their $1 million to West Goshen Township, is the capital portion going to the sewer authority and the maintenance, 600,000 coming to the township?
I believe that's correct.
Absolutely correct.
Absolutely correct.
Now again, just for your edification, West Whiteland diverts their flow to DARA, the Downingtown Regional Authority, and us.
Okay.
So you may see other numbers in there that have nothing to do with
Right,
West Goshen.
yeah, they separate that out. It's
Yep,
very clear.
very good.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. I think that was it on budget. So we're moving on to the next agenda item, which is request for healthcare coverage from Supervisor-elect Tina Smith. So, get to that. So Supervisor-elect Tina Smith has requested to have healthcare coverage for herself and spouse effective from the beginning of her term in office on January 1st, 2022, as made available by the Pennsylvania Act 69 Article 6 to Pennsylvania Township Supervisors. I would like to make the motion to approve Supervisor-elect Tina Smith.
And I'd like to second.
Coverage. Thank you, John. Any board questions or comments? Any public questions or comments?
Third. Our insurance starts at the first of the month.
Okay, I should have said the insurance to start effective January 1st, correct? Correct. Thank you. Thanks for the correction. Any questions or comments, Margie?
Yes, just, it says, and other health insurance related benefits. What are those other health related benefits?
And what are you reading from?
From Tina's letter.
Dental.
Dental vision.
Okay, I just didn't know.
Dental vision.
And then also, not that not specific to you, but any board member who is eligible for Medicare, is this like a supplemental? If somebody is eligible for
I see where you're going, and just correct me if I'm wrong. The township code does not allow for the township to buy a supplemental Medicare plan. That's something we don't offer any employees, so we're not allowed to offer that. Any township supervisors, no matter how old they are, they can be on our health insurance with Medicare as a secondary. We have nothing to do with Medicare. We have nothing to do with their decision. They can stay on Medicare if they want to and not take ours. That's nothing to do with the township.
I just always thought that Medicare, once you're on Medicare, that is your primary, and then anything else is secondary. That's not how it works.
This becomes primary if she signs up for it.
Okay, thank you.
It's just like a private corporation. If you're
Yeah,
working at
if
70
you're
years
80,
old,
exactly.
when I used to work, you could stay on the company plan,
Yeah.
and have to take, you don't take Medicare.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any other public comment? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Very good, thank you. Number 6, continued discussion on the proposed tree ordinance. So a preliminary discussion on the content of the draft tree ordinance was held at the board meeting on November the 16th. The board requested Kristen to prepare a draft ordinance based on the initial work of the Sustainability Committee and the input from staff and the board on November the 16th. So Kristen, would you like to just describe where we are?
Yeah, I mean, the Sustainability Committee met, I believe, November 23rd and had some comments on the points that I had raised or my concerns that I had raised, and they went back and very nicely, summarized their, clarification points. So I just took that and had a follow-up conversation with Ashley, I think. And I gave you 2 versions. I gave you sort of the red line of what was handed to me, and then I also turned that into an ordinance format that you typically would see, adopting a new chapter. And I just pick a number that chronologically fits because they're alphabetically located within your general code book. So that's what we have before you.
Is there any staff comments? Casey, Rick, Chris, Bill, where we are with this, some of the concerns you originally had around, making sure the clarity was there. Is there anything that's still outstanding?
Yeah, we reviewed it in detail.
Do you have a question?
Section 2068. I know that the utility companies decide their own people use contractors. What it says required for employees of the public utilities, contractors are employees of
Two- 206.
206 in the
Page 3.
Page 3.
He says, well, under 74A9A shall be, however, no permit shall be required for employees of any public utility company or the township who are performing work on trees as part of their scope.
You could add contractors. We'd ask one is
Employees or designees of contractors.
Contractors or designees of
Or should I just say agents of the public
Agents.
utility company?
Agents covers
Official
covers everybody. Yeah, cool.
Is there any other public comments on the language?
Yeah, I have 2 questions for clarification. On 74A-5, distance from street corners and fire hydrants. And there it states that no street tree shall obstruct a clear sight triangle required by section 72-27. Can you describe what the sight triangle is? What exactly is that?
Clear sight triangle is a sight triangle made between the intersection of 2 roads between them. So if you have 2 roads intersecting like this, you draw a triangle at a certain distance from the intersection, that's the clear sight triangle.
And how far back would that?
It depends on what distance the clear sight triangle is designated to be. It's usually 100 feet, but it could be more.
And where is that defined?
In the zoning ordinance.
It's in Saldo.
It's in the Saldo.
It's in the Saldo for that particular intersection?
No.
Whatever. So it's defined at whatever that is. Okay.
Yep.
The second question I have is 74A-10, control of street trees and township trees. Township shall have exclusive custody and control of township trees and street trees that are located within the area where the township owns the right-of-way in fee of any township street. So then the rest of that would apply to township trees and no street trees within the right-of-way. So the cutting down of any street tree or township tree, which would require approval, it only applies to that situation. Is that correct? It's not a personal property we're talking about.
Right, but there's also a distinction between right-of-way the township owns in fee simple and right-of-way the township just has an easement over. So there are some older roads in the township that the deeds go to the center line of the street. So the property owner owns the center line of the street and the township just has a right-of-way over for the use of the road. So this is saying, this section only deals where the township owns all of the land that is the right-of-way, the 50 feet. Because in newer subdivisions now, you're taking fee simple title to either the 60 feet or the 50 feet that's the road and the right-of-way. So that's one thing, I guess, that I want to make clear, that if you have a right-of-way where you just own an easement, and you don't own the land underlying the road, private property owners are responsible for the maintenance of those trees. But if you own the entirety of the road, you're responsible for maintenance of those trees because you own the land. Does that make sense?
Just going to make it clear that when a person's personal property that does not fall within those areas you just designated, they don't have to get approval from the township to cut down a tree.
No, if they're doing work like in their rear yard or outside of the designated public right of way, no, they would not need a permit.
Okay.
Except though, but hold on guys, because that is a little confusing, because the arborist permit under 74A9, that doesn't have the distinction of, wait, let me make sure, let me go back to the definition of street trees. Yeah, so street trees, the definition of street trees includes both where you have just the right of way and where you own in fee simple the road. So older streets, you just have a right of way over. And it's better to draw it. So there's some streets where you own, if this is 50 feet, you own in fee simple the entire 50 feet. In older streets, you have the property lines might go to the center line like this, and you have the right of way to use it. But if this is my lot, and there's a street tree here, I'm responsible, and I have to get I think I'm still gonna have to get a permit to remove that tree. So that's why I just wanna make sure it was the intention to be, even if you don't own, the township doesn't own in fee simple the road and the right of way, if it's within your right of way as an easement, it's still a street tree, and the property owner is going to be responsible to have to deal with that.
The intention of doing that is to maintain the street tree canopy, right? So
Yeah.
they can't just take down street trees.
And to make sure they are not topped and disfigured and everything else.
So for example, in my neighborhood, there was a situation where my neighbor had trees along the township right of way. It was on her property, but they were overhanging the road, and so she was required to trim the branches, but it was on her dime, like she had to pay for that. And then if the property owner doesn't maintain the trees, then the township or whoever comes in and then they're billed for it, I guess.
Well, maybe it's dangerous, it's creating a dangerous situation.
Right, so.
But to go back and answer John's question, John knows, under 74A9, if my private property, the township has a right of way over it, if there's a street tree there, I have to get a permit.
That's a problem. Correct.
I'm responsible to remove that street tree if it's causing a situation, and the way 74A9 is written, whoever I hire to do it, the sure it's not going to be me, they're going to have to get a permit. Is that that's how it's worded, just to make sure that's the intention. Okay.
Yeah, again, it's a street tree, but it would be within that public right of way. So if you're far enough set back from that public right of way easement or whatever, then you wouldn't need to get a permit.
Correct. It's not,
It's still private property, private property.
That's the way street trees
So
are
if it's
defined.
not a street tree and it's on your private property.
Yeah,
you
that's
don't
right.
need a permit.
That's right. But if it's a street tree on your private property, but within the public right of way, you're responsible to maintain and remove it if it's causing a problem. And you need to get a permit to do so. Yeah. Okay.
I just want to ask the members of the Sustainability Committee that are here, does this seem consistent with the requirements for Tree City USA in this ordinance? And is this what you had in mind as the intention?
I think so. And the situation that Kristen explained is rather rare, especially in kind of situation where that would apply. So it's just a clause in there just so that in these rare situations, depending on the property, the homeowner might rely
would they be responsible for replacing, putting that on the
Yeah, we didn't put that in there.
Carve that piece out of it.
You don't have to put that in there.
Can we carve that piece out of it, where the homeowner will not be responsible for a tree that's on private property that overhangs into a public right of way, to be responsible to cut and maintain?
You would, I think you would want that. That's what the
Yeah.
same class code requires.
Yes, exactly.
You would want what, Kristen?
You would want.
You would want them to be responsible. Because that's a lot, I mean, you don't have your public works people here, but that's a lot of money for the public works that have to deal with trees in the right of way that are causing a problem.
Street trees.
So there's a lot of circumstances where that would occur in the township?
Sure.
There are.
It does.
I probably send out. Yeah, there was one neighborhood I sent a letter to every single house in the neighborhood.
Okay. So we will let that expense. I'm just trying to think of the homeowner and the expense on them too, especially an older couple, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I just sent 3 letters out 2 weeks ago for site distance issues from trees. The crafts complain about. Yep.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just considering the citizen and the other income and how the trees are expensive. They can't go up, you don't know, thousands of dollars. But I understand the question of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we with, is there any change needed to where we are?
I have a question. Now with the revision, it's 7410. So the introductory paragraph, I think we discussed in our sustainability, and it now says that, and now it's restricted, the first sentence of that is restricted to where the township owns the right of way in feet. And but in the following paragraph, A, there's no B, but that following paragraph, I think, would apply to any street tree. So it would include street trees that are within, not only the CEO right away, but also the easement. Is that
Yeah,
an ambiguity?
no, I don't think it's ambiguity, but I can try to clarify if you want. Because the terms exclusive custody and control, when we said it, when it applied to where the township just has a right of way, that's inconsistent with the statement to say that they're responsible to remove dangerous and disease. That's what I was making sure, the point I was clarifying, is that we weren't willing to give that up to say, you're responsible to make sure on your land, even though it's a right of way, if you have a tree that's causing a dangerous situation to the road, it's your responsibility to maintain it. And you guys had cited the 81.3 section of the code, but then you need to recognize that. So it's only the exclusive care and custody is when the township is the fee simple owner of the road.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I was just thinking maybe.
So maybe the language could be right after the title, put an A, and say the township shall have exclusive custody and control, A, and then what's A can be B.
Yeah.
That might make better sense. I like that better.
You shouldn't have an A and have kids.
And that's why general codes will change it and make it be the appropriate way. Because sometimes they start out with A, B's, and C's, and then we get rid of them, and we don't always get to the A. So, but yeah, I think that's a better idea.
Very good. Are there any other changes? You captured the one about Q and the Asia.
Yeah.
That's good.
And this is a 1-week ad, so if you wanted to move this forward to your 21st, you can.
And we had a deadline, right? We needed to get this in place by February or something.
Yeah, the tree city.
That's Tree City, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if the boards, we can get that advertised, Friday or.
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion to advertise for adoption of this ordinance? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll second, subject to the changes.
Include the change.
Subject to the changes, yes.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any public comments or questions? Doug?
Does this ordinance, does it only include street trees? Does it also discuss the preservation of older historic trees or the preservation of existing trees on future land developments?
It doesn't discuss anything to do with trees that are on private property, historic preservation of trees. Does not reflect any of that.
It's just
trees.
And township trees, trees on township-owned property.
Okay, these are street trees and township trees.
Yeah.
Right.
Are there any other public questions or comments? Okay, ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your work. It's great.
Okay, so item number 7 on the agenda is discussion, discussion and possible approval to register with the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office in the proposed opioid settlement. So Casey, I don't know if you can help us out, just give us a background on this. I know we've asked a question from the board.
Yes, we received this memo from Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General's Office, a couple of months ago. We have until January 2nd to make a final decision on whether or not to join the lawsuit, or I'm sorry, not the lawsuit, the settlement. If the board decided not to approve and partake of the settlement, that would reserve our right as a township to litigate against the opioid manufacturers. I don't see the township venturing into litigation like that. That would take years and years and years, cost us millions of dollars. So we would join in with virtually every other Commonwealth municipality in Pennsylvania to partake in the settlement agreement that the Attorney General's Office is offering. And they would divvy up that money based on, I'm not sure how they're going to do it yet. That's up for discussion. But the township could receive funding for that. Now, Chief Carroll's here. Outside of officers, I'm just getting to the expenditure side. We have not had any direct expenditures, correct, for Narcan or anything?
Other than time.
Right,
right. Supplies are, we get through defects.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I may recommend, since we don't offer any, it's not our jurisdiction to offer opioid counseling or a recovery center, it's not our township, in our township code, you might offer it to our ambulance companies as a pass-through for them to buy more equipment, materials, etc. That's just my recommendation. And I'm not sure how long this is going to take to even get settled. It'll probably be late next year till we see.
Is there a cost for us to participate? Is there a legal cost of preparing anything?
No, it's just
Is there
simply a
resource
registration.
hours for pulling information together?
It's not a bit.
I make a motion.
And also,
You said my
Sure.
question, basically.
Yeah, there is nothing but a simple registration form that has to be submitted. That's it. It's just not staff time for a few minutes.
Thank you, Casey.
Sure.
Hugh has made a motion. Mr. John seconded it?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Any other board questions?
The motion was to join?
Yes.
To opt in to the
To opt into
settlement.
the settlement.
Are there any public questions or comments?
Just so you're aware, we get the Narcan through a PCOD grant, which pays for the medication, and then Good Fellowship runs Project Naloxone, essentially, just so you kind of have a background on it. And what we do is when there's a use by a police officer, a PMS organization, a fire company, we actually replenish that for them. So we supply all of the Narcan to every police unit in the county. So it's not just
No, it's not just
our best friends over here.
Yeah, right.
We do it for every police officer in Chester County. And every police officer's vehicle now has Narcan in it. So we actually replenish that for them through this grant. And Good Fellowship takes on a cost of about $15,000 a year because there's an administrative piece to this. For not only NCIP influence, all these things that you have to do for data. So the grant funds the medication, but we have the expense of about $15,000 that we take on because we believe in Project Naloxone, opioid wing in their hands. So just so you kind of have a picture of what's behind that.
So that I can go on a little bit. So any funding that, let's say, Goshen receives, that would be a help to you?
Yeah, we don't have anything that offsets the administrative costs.
Okay.
So, yeah, that would be, thank you.
Even more reason to award him this good
No, this year award. Our board is very generous.
That's amazing.
I'm very thankful for our board. They don't really have a regard for financial stuff if it really gives back to the community. And serving outside of just our entities for service, we serve the county in multiple fashions, and that's just one of them.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's try to vote. We've already approved it, are we ready to take a vote? You got me all confused.
I prolonged it.
You asked for public comment.
Thanks, Bob. All right, so ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, agenda item number 8, resolution 18/2021, hazard mitigation plan, discussion and possible approval. Casey.
Sure. Yes. This is resolution 18 of 2021 for the Board of Supervisors to approve the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 requires state and local governments to develop and submit for approval to the President a mitigation plan that outlines processes for identifying their respective national hazards, risks, and vulnerabilities. And in this resolution, the Township acknowledges the requirements of Section 322 of DMA 2000 to have an approved hazard mitigation plan as a prerequisite to receiving post-disaster hazard mitigation grant program funds. And the 2021 Chester County Hazard Mitigation Plan has been developed by Chester County DES in cooperation with other county departments and officials and citizens of West Goshen Township. And it's just resolving that the Chester County 2021 Hazard Mitigation Plan be adopted by West Goshen Township, and that the respective officials and agencies identified in the implementation strategy of the 2021 Hazard Mitigation Plan are hereby directed to implement the recommended activities assigned to them. So, any questions?
Any questions from the board? Okay, you has made a motion to adopt the resolution for the Chester County Hazard Mitigation Plan. Is there a second?
I'll say it.
There was something you said there, Casey, that I have a question on. It's about, were there some specific things that we need to do in West Goshen Township in adopting this plan that we need to address in 22 that we don't have in place yet?
I believe we have everything in place, but that's something I have to work with staff and Andrea Testa on, just to make sure that we are doing everything we're supposed to for this plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember us giving input to the process, but I can't remember if there's some specific West Goshen actions on this or not. So, if we just
double check that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are there any public comments or questions? Any other board comments? No. Okay. So a motion and a second, ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Thank you very much. Motion passes. Okay, agenda item number 9, discussion and possible approval of resolution number 19/2021, PA Department of Transportation grants online reporting system participation. And this is with Chris.
Mr. Chairman, this is for submitting the necessary forms required to receive our annual liquid fuels funding from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. They are migrating to this system.
So this is new? This system is new?
Yes, and this would authorize execution of the agreement that's required in order to participate.
Very good. Thank you, Hugh. Hugh has made the motion to adopt this resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Robin. Any board questions or comments about the resolution? Are there any public comments or questions?
How much is the funding?
I'm sorry?
How much is the funding received?
Oh, it's our liquid fuels money, so it fluctuates every year based on a it's based off the gas tax that everybody pays to the state. So we're prorated based on population, et cetera, from PennDOT. But this allows us to file our annual report of use electronically, as opposed to doing it with paper. We file a paper form, then we have to drive it to King of Prussia to the office. They come out and inspect, and this allows us to do it electronically instead. Really pushed during COVID, obviously, because PennDOT was working at home, and it was kind of hard to get them out here to sign off on things. So.
But the amount is usually like $750,000.
Yeah, the amount doesn't matter, right, exactly.
Are there any other questions? Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Thank you. Agenda item number 10. 11. Discussion and approval of Board of Supervisor 2022 meeting dates and times. So I forget how long we've had in place 2 meetings a month, but clearly we have enough, in my opinion, clearly we have enough business to justify 2 meetings a month. Otherwise we'd be here till 2 in the morning.
Exactly.
The first and third Tuesday, we call one a workshop. They've really evolved into just being a second meeting. It's just really been a second meeting because of the nature of the business we've dealt with. So for 22, does the board still support having 2 meetings a month? We'll call them both regular meetings at this point, I suppose. And do you want to continue with one starting at 6 o'clock and one at 7 o'clock, or do you want to consolidate the start time?
Just for information, the sewer authority just voted to move their meeting up to 6 o'clock as well. Their monthly meeting.
Good move. Okay.
Given our 3, 4, 5-hour meetings, absolutely.
So Kristen or anyone else who's attending, is there any issue with a 6 o'clock start? No? Staff prefer it, I would imagine.
We're here from 7 a.m. on, so yeah, that would be.
I was looking at it from the staff standpoint, they work very long hours, and days, so if you can, accommodate them a little bit easier.
6 would be great.
Yeah, we've had no comment or feedback from the public about different start times or inability to attend a 6 o'clock meeting. And we can always adjust it if needed.
We just re-advertise, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're looking to make a motion tonight so that we can advertise these public meetings.
Correct. I think it's 22 advertising out in a week or so it's all done for the entire year.
Is there any dates in 22 that fall on election day? Or I don't think it does next year.
I don't think so,
But
I do need to check.
It's not election day in November. It's November the 1st in 22.
Right.
November the 8th is, I believe.
Yeah, I want to do a full review of all those dates because I looked at them. What's that?
How do you know all
Did you, that's yeah,
Yeah, sure.
Because I know it was a conflict just a month ago, right?
Yes,
We
exactly.
changed it, it bumped up like 1 week apart, we
Right.
still needed the 2 meetings.
Yeah. I'll review the 2022 calendar for those dates, and if there are any obvious conflicts, Doug, you brought those conflicts to us before. If there's any obvious conflicts, I'll email the board separately and get your take, because you can either cancel the meeting or move it to the next, depending which day it falls, we can move it back a week. So I'll give you those variables and options.
Yeah, okay.
For the calendar, definitely.
All right, so does someone want to make a motion to have a meeting scheduled on the 1st and 3rd Tuesday of each month, starting at 6 p.m. for 2022?
I'll make it.
Thank you, Ashley. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Robin. Any public questions or comments about the meeting schedule for next year? Doug?
So will the actual dates be discussed in more detail at the reorg meeting?
They'll be announced at the reorg meeting. But I have to do I typically do, most municipalities do the advertisement for the full year in December for the entire year, because we have the auditors meeting immediately, we have the board reorg meeting, so there won't be any time to advertise those except as one-off meetings. So we do the entire year's advertisement.
So we're going to rely on you, Kate, to let the board know before you advertise if
Absolutely.
you see a conflict. So Doug, if you have an issue now about the first and third Tuesday of any month, please raise it to Casey.
Yeah, please email me, look at your calendar and just make sure.
Okay, the only thing is about the Jewish holiday.
Right, exactly. So just check the calendar and let me know, we can okay.
Can I ask a request, please?
Mm-hmm.
On the Tuesday, usually it's the first Tuesday meetings when Monday is a holiday. Is it possible for staff to put the agenda on the website Thursday instead of late Friday afternoon? Because what happens if public, me, if there's any questions about something that's on the agenda, then Monday's a holiday, and then you can't get any information about anything or answers to questions you might have until the day of the meeting, if that makes sense. It's happened a couple of times where it's like something, a big rezoning or a big land development. And it's
Good
like,
point. So how many Monday holidays do we have? Memorial Day?
Labor Day, I'll have to check the rest. President's Day, Columbus Day.
The Mondays? They're all Mondays?
Typically. Yeah, I'll check the schedule.
I never got them off, so.
Yeah, sure.
So maybe just for those instances, you could post it on Thursday.
Yeah,
Just on those
I think that's a
particular
fair request,
holiday weekends.
especially specific to the item. If it's just post an agenda and allow someone a couple of days to get a response, so I think it's a fair request. Does the board support that?
yeah,
Sure.
thank you.
We've got a motion in a second, so I need to take a vote. Any other public comments? Gary? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Very good. Thanks, Casey. Okay, agenda item number 12, discussion of bus shelter as part of the proposed redevelopment at 829 Paoli Pike for Stanley West Goshen LLC. Casey, Rick, and Kristen.
Yeah, I want Rick and obviously Kristen to fill in here as well. The developer, Stanberry, contacted me now just maybe a week ago at this point. They submitted their final highway occupancy permit application to PennDOT probably 30 days ago, maybe 40 days ago. And the only comment they have back, everything else has been approved per the HOP. Obviously, this is 829 Bailey Pike. It's strictly within PennDOT right of way. It's PennDOT owned road. The township has nothing to do with this at all except land development approval. PennDOT returned with their only comment was the land development, I'm sorry, the property owner is not allowed to own the bus shelter. And they're requesting that the township, because PennDOT nor SEPTA, even this is a SEPTA bus stop, will be used by no one but SEPTA. They will not take ownership of it either. So, of course, I had a very interesting phone call with the developer saying, oh, are you kidding me? I mean, it's just very strange for me for PennDOT to require this.
So, let me interrupt.
No,
So
absolutely.
we have a bus shelter already in this township.
Yeah,
It is
we have
owned by
several.
the township.
No, they're
So who are they owned by?
They're owned by Clear Channel, which is an advertising company essentially.
They own the bus shelter?
They do.
There was a time when Clear Channel wanted to own them for advertising
For
purposes and
advertising
actually
purposes.
gave revenue to the township.
Yeah.
But that process is not happening with Clear
So
Channel.
those
Not
bus
willing to do
shelters
that.
would not have been constructed if they hadn't been willing to fund them.
Correct. On
That's
private property.
On private property.
Yeah. So now PennDOT has, again, changed, I'm not sure which kind of language you want to use, changed lanes, I don't know. They're not allowing Stanberry as the property owner to own the SEPTA approved. It's the brand new SEPTA model of the way a bus shelter is supposed to be built. It's brand new. It's going to cost about $25,000. Be a great amenity for the township and for people using the shopping center, people traveling to it for work. It's a great amenity. I talked the developer into it months and months and months ago to put on their plan with SEPTA's, request as well. And now PennDOT's not allowing them to build it because they won't allow a private landowner to own a bus stop, a shelter,
So
essentially.
it's analogous to the situation a couple years ago, PennDOT issued what's called a strike-off letter, and it changed their policy on ownership of storm drains within PennDOT right of way. They are funneling the responsibility down to the local municipalities. And now they're saying on HOP applications where you have storm drains and storm pipes within PennDOT right of way, township, you have to be the permittee. And so what we've done is we've entered these operations and maintenance agreements with developers to say, we understand that PennDOT's making us be the permittee, but if there's something that needs to happen to these drain pipes, property owner, it's your development, you're responsible. So what I had suggested to Casey is we could use that agreement as a model, that the property owner is willing to build, own, and maintain it, to build and maintain it, but PennDOT wants to make sure that if that property owner goes bankrupt or is no longer, it isn't a good property owner or is not diligent in maintenance, that somebody who's for sure going to be here, like the township, will ultimately be on the hook. So you can put this agreement in place if you're willing to do it. I think your options are, they don't build it because you don't want to get in the business of having anything to do with bus shelters. That's one option. Second option is if you believe it's a positive public amenity to provide to the shopping center and their other residents who will be coming to the shopping center, you could agree to be the permittee and then put an agreement in place that as best as you can shifts the maintenance obligations to the property owner. Now, there would be, if in the instance where they didn't properly maintain it, we would have the language that the township could go do it and then recover the cost from the property, and failure for them to pay you, you can put a lien on the property. So there would be some remedies and teeth to it, but it's not 100% fail-safe. I mean,
And if somebody else were to, in the future, buy that property,
it would run with the land. It runs with the land, so the next owner would be responsible to honor the terms of that agreement.
Right. Just like with our stormwater agreements, this will be bus shelter agreement, and it would be recorded with the recorder of deeds office and run with that parcel.
And I will tell you that I serve on the TMAC board for however many more days,
Yeah.
25 more days.
Sure.
And it's been a conversation that TMAC has had, that we really feel that there's a void in Chester County as far as bus shelters are concerned. And I think the county commissioners have, it's on their radar to sort of figure out, we want these amenities, they're needed, but who's going to own them, who's going to maintain them? So I think, what I bring that up to say that what we put in place today, or what we agreed to today, may change in the future, because there may be some other entity that says, maybe it's SEPTA, maybe separate policy changes, and says, you know, we want to own these facilities. Maybe it's PennDOT changes, and PennDOT's policies changes, and they say, okay, no, we want it. I mean, so it is something that you can deal with what the facts are today, and you can plan as best you can to protect yourself and shift responsibilities if you're not willing to take on that ownership and maintenance. But know that in the future there may be some other nonprofit or transportation, even TMAC. Even TMAC may be something, you know, they're a nonprofit that may in the future decide that that's something that helps with their congestion mitigation mission.
Do you have a motion made up?
Not yet. We want to
I
policy discussion.
got some questions on this. I got several questions for those people.
No, I was wondering what that would look like.
For the motion.
Yeah, what it would look like.
Or you explore what we're going to do.
You need more information.
Well, maybe. Let's see where we are, right? You got the memo, right? So we've got the information here. So the questions I have are, so for example, existing bus shelters that are owned by who?
Clear Channel
If
Communications.
they went bankrupt, what would happen to those?
They would fall most likely into disrepair unless the property, I mean, we're talking, you know,
So
all
we
the
don't
apartments.
we don't have to pick those up.
All
We
of them
just
are
build
on
them.
PennDOT right of way and private
PennDOT
property.
probably, you know,
PennDOT may, if they get into horrible disrepair, PennDOT may come in and tear them down or order the.
Right, so there would be nothing to do with the township at this point. Okay, so for this particular ownership model, which I think you described, if I understand it correctly, is it a township asset? Is it a $25,000 asset on our township books as a bus shelter, or is it, how is it treated?
We would have to take ownership of it and go on our fixed assets list. Although we are deferring through that agreement, that bus shelter agreement, not ownership, but maintenance and.
We don't have to budget any repair and maintenance.
No,
We have this agreement.
No,
Would
not
it
at
show up as a $25,000 asset on our
fixed assets ledger, yes, absolutely. At no expense to us, there's no offsetting expense.
Okay.
It would just show up as an asset.
And one of the
Can we
things,
advertise on this bus shelter? Is it something we can lease and advertise on? Or is it
I
separate
believe we
decide
can.
what can go on there?
No, it would be the township's property, so we could put up a billboard or put, those, you know, those sticky.
Yeah, film things.
The film things, exactly, yeah.
Okay, and just on the legal, the liability side of it, I think I understood that, hey, we would have an agreement in place so that we're not responsible for the maintenance of it. If the property owner fails to maintain it, it would be a breach of this agreement. As you said, we could end up putting a lien on the property. If they sell the property, this agreement would be such that it would transfer to the new owner. So is there any other risk in terms of liability?
yeah, if there's an accident, you own it, someone's going to sue the township.
Yeah, I
Sure.
mean, if the seven of us runs over the shelter and kills someone, we're going to be involved in the lawsuit in the
Absolutely.
shelter.
You own shelter.
This is the downside that we want to also talk about.
You're the permittee.
We're the permittee and the owner of it, even though we're not maintaining it. If there's a horrible accident and a person's killed, we're going to get sued.
Because give me an scenario where, so that trapped or crushed within this bus shelter.
Right.
In fact, there's a bus shelter there, who owns it? I'm gonna
Even
sue
if they're in
them.
proximity of it, I think we would be drawn into a lawsuit, no matter what.
Well, yeah, okay, and if there's somebody sleeping in the bus shelter, we are responsible for dealing with
Well,
that.
that would be township property, but that would be, unlike Carroll District.
And trash would be maintained by the property owner.
Correct. That would be part of the maintenance.
Has this been presented to Standard yet?
Oh, yeah, I've been talking about it. They want this to happen.
There's no bus stop there now, right? There's no bus stop spot.
There's a bus, it's the Chester County kind of bus stop. It's the placard up on the
No
top.
shelter.
No, nothing like that.
But here's,
Certificate of insurance, for example, protect us from storm.
Here, Rick's been trying to say something. Yeah, Richard,
here's the other negative that hasn't been discussed. Kristen talks about an operation maintenance agreement that we can deal with the property owner. That's true. And that also applies to stormwater facilities, which we have steadfastly rejected throughout, since the strike-off letter was
For the PennDOT
effect.
issues, yes.
We have never agreed to be a co-permittee on PennDOT HOP for exactly the reason that we don't want to get saddled with that responsibility forever and ever and ever. So if we start to come to co-permittee to own bus shelters, PennDOT's going to turn around and say, well, you know, you're doing that, but we want you to do it on stormwater. We have never done it.
But we are not required to sign off by PennDOT. We're not required to sign off for stormwater. We've had how many HOPs issued and we've never signed off.
But that's surprising to me, because every other municipality that I represent has to be.
But we're setting a precedent by becoming a co-permittee on a PennDOT permit on PennDOT property that we're going to own stuff. That's
It's
a
a
bad
process,
precedent.
you guys have to decide, do you want the bus shelter or not?
Yeah.
And if you do, you think it's a good amenity, this
I think it's a good amenity.
this PennDOT's telling you, they're not going to allow it in their right of way unless the township is a permittee. There's a lot of things to consider, but that's what it comes down to ultimately is, you know, considering the maintenance, the liability, that kind of thing, where does it stand? Because PennDOT's saying we're not going to allow it otherwise. And you don't have to make a decision tonight.
No.
You know, it's just something to think about.
And the developer is.
Well, what's the developer, is there a time limit on that?
Yeah, I mean, they're in final plan with review with Rick.
But here's the thing, it's not going to hold up their plan.
No, exactly.
Because we routinely give conditional plan approval based on obtaining an HOP.
Yep.
So they can get their plan approval
Right.
prior to getting the HOP.
And then even if you said no now,
Yep.
they could go get their HOP, but if you change your mind in the future or some other, you know, entity comes along to agree to be the permittee that PennDOT accepts, they could go back and amend their HOP because they ready.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But what would be the incentive for them at that point? I mean, why would they want to zero?
Well,
it's like, what
bring people to their, maybe bring people to their shopping
center. Down the road, what's the incentive?
Well, I mean, the incentive for the property owner is they're looking for traffic there that's not going to come in a personal vehicle. It's on a major bus route, it's near an urban area. They're going to be looking for pedestrian traffic, and that's the way to get it. So if they want to encourage that, then they want to have a nice bus shelter. And I grant you, it would be nice to have a nice bus shelter, but I think that negatives, unfortunately, the way PennDOT's structured right now with their strike-off letter, the negatives outweigh the positives, in my opinion. I think it's a slippery slope. It's starting to become a co-permittee on PennDOT
Are we
permits.
any examples of where that fear has been realized in any dealings with these kind of state entities?
Yeah, we've got a whole lot of townships now that are responsible for stormwater facilities in PennDOT right away.
But we're not.
We're not, no.
So what about, Kristen, if we accept the bus shelter, but we stand firm on stormwater issues, that we get in trouble and forced into having to, like, set a precedent here, so now you need to do it?
No, I mean, I think they're separate issues. I think the maintenance of a storm drain is different than the maintenance of a bus shelter. I mean, one of the things I asked Casey is, how much maintenance is there in a bus shelter? I mean, short of emptying trash, is there a lot of maintenance of a bus
Well,
shelter?
yeah, the vandalism is what is
Okay,
the biggest
okay,
issue.
well.
There's going to be maintenance. I mean, there's going to
What you're
be.
saying is we have a choice with the stormwater. We have the,
Well, I
and
mean,
we don't.
you always have the choice whether you want to be her permittee, but there may be some developments that'll come in that you need the storm drains in the PennDOT right of way, and the developer is unable to avoid them. So, according to Rick, that hasn't happened yet, but there may come a time where, I don't know, I mean, I'm surprised by that.
That's a possibility, but we've had 3 separate projects where we've made the developer redesign the stormwater system so they don't have to go in PennDOT right away, and everyone's been able to do it.
Yeah.
It's amazing the incentive when you want to get a permit approval, so.
But yeah, you'll still have that, it's still in your discretion to say, no, we're not going to own what's not in our right of way.
Yeah, yeah. So my question to the board is, I mean, you know all the issues now. Can we make a decision tonight, or do we need to boot this down the road because we'll be having the same conversation next time we talk about it?
Well, my feeling is this is an amenity which we would like to see in the township. We want to encourage people to use public transportation, and having a bus shelter would help do that. If we didn't have a bus shelter, then it would encourage people not to use public transportation. I understand all the potential pitfalls here. Maybe we need to have further discussion to discuss how we can make this happen. But my own feeling is I'd like to see it happen.
Okay, thanks, John. Other thoughts? So to my question, are we in a position to be able to make a motion tonight to select a way, to decide a way forward? Does anybody feel confident enough to do that?
I mean, one way you could do it, Sean, is we could ask the developers council to put together the actual agreement, so you're actually seeing and reading and understanding what your obligations are versus what their obligations are. And maybe that helps shed light on how the
I'm
maintenance
just nervous about Rick's point.
Yeah, sure.
And
I think Kristen, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, because we don't make a decision, we can wait a little bit more than that.
And I will tell Lou, it's Lou Greco who represents them, that there's no guarantee that if you just, if your client's still willing to do it, use the stormwater agreement as a model, but now make it be for bus shelters, and the board will consider it. And if they may change their mind and say, no, we don't want to do it, right?
Correct. I mean,
I'd like to hear from them directly.
there's no requirement from us or from PennDOT to put this in, or SEPTA. It just remains the placard on the telephone pole. That's the stop.
Okay,
So we can work on that
so
tomorrow.
we'll look at that. I'd like to see an outline of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 13, approval of the bills to be paid to the general fund, the sewer revenue fund, the waste and recycling fund, and the capital reserve fund. You has made the motion for the bills to be paid. Bob has made a second. I have a question. On the prepaid funds, Casey,
Which page?
sewer 08 and
Where are we?
trash 09.
Tell me where you're up right now, Sean.
It's nothing on the pages.
13.
At least I have anyway.
Sewer 08 and 09?
Yeah, it's just the Buckley Bryan charges, just you can make your way out. The invoiced amount for those, it talks about municipal liens. So what is going on there? What is the work that Buckley's doing for us?
We're filing your municipal liens for unpaid trash and sewer.
Right.
And is that once a year we're doing that?
No,
We
those
do
are frequent.
we do it almost every day.
Almost
Somebody
every
sends
day,
us,
yeah.
Cheryl Wilkinson sends us a
Maybe I
list
missed
of your,
one of the bills. Do we typically itemize it like this, or is it rolled into a different line?
no, it's always,
It's always,
separate bills.
especially sewer and trash.
Because we call out, you pay us, but we ultimately get it to the property.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Any public comments or questions on the bills? All right. All in favor of paying the bills, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Very good, thank you. Agenda item number 14, public comment, round 2. Are there any public comments tonight?
I have
Hey, Lottie.
I sent an email to you, Sean and Ashley, and I believe John, about these capital reserve road maintenance expenditures. And I'm just going to focus on 2021, where we budgeted $1.8 million, but we're only spending 7.75. So we have a surplus of 1.15.
Unspent money of 1.15.
Okay, and our 2022 budget is essentially $40,000 difference, 1.157. So my question is, of the unspent 1.15 from 2021, are all those projects rolling into 2022.
I believe so.
Okay, so there's nothing in that road maintenance expense fund, the 1.157 budgeted for 2022. Nothing is new.
I don't believe so, because I believe they're all carryover projects, and all our new projects are being funded from the American Rescue Act that we talked about.
Okay, great. And then just a point, 2015, when I started coming regularly to these meetings, because of the proposed stormwater fee at the time, our combined balances, we had 10 million in the general fund, 2.7 in the capital reserve fund. So we were sitting, I'm going to call it $13 million. Here we are, 6-7 years later, we're at 17.8. So between those two funds, I mean, we've increased our financial position by $5 million. And I didn't understand, I didn't see the need for a stormwater fee then. Now we're $5 million more comfortable, and we're talking about that fee. You don't have to address it, I just wanted to make that comment. And lastly, I got to give a shout out to Bill Webb, because every year this time I always go into my request to Citizen Finance Budget Committee. I want that on record, that again, I'm asking in 2022 that the board form some type of committee. So when I did a quick Google, PA Township Citizen Finance Committee, I see Bill Webb, when he was chairman of West Brandywine Township, his resolution forming a Citizen Finance Committee. Pretty cool. So anyway, I hope this board will consider the same. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Any other questions, Doug?
Just a quick public input comment on the budget. I mentioned this before, but I just would respectfully request that the board consider about the sewer rate increase, 14.2%. If you have to do it, but then also please consider an alternative strategy, maybe combining a small loan with a standalone increase may result in less. I don't know if you just look into it, if it would result in an overall less increase and still generate the revenues needed and allow for some flexibility, immediate influx of cash and flexible payback terms. Just an idea. I mean, you can always look into it later.
I mean, you know, Judge, we've had the authority meeting.
I know.
We've got a solid plan of how to fund capital requirements for the next 10 years. It's a pay-as-you-go mechanism versus borrowing money and paying interest on it. So, okay. Any other questions?
I have a quick question. On September 30th, we had a tabletop exercise here following the incident at Boot Road Pump Station. And we're supposed to have gotten a report back from the Chippewa County Department of Emergency Services in November. Now we are in December. So where are we at with that? What is the status of that?
Sure. The person in charge of that report was on medical for almost a month, so she was not able to produce that report. Chris and I met with her virtually last Friday, and she submitted to us the draft final report. There are some variables that Chris and I have to review with her on Thursday to then be able to present it to you as the final action report. She did caution that this report, which is probably, 8 pages, thereabouts, is not for public consumption. It's for the board's consumption only. You can use that report to create a press release or something like that for the public, but it contains very infrastructure critical points that should not be released to the public. I just wanted to acknowledge the board on that.
Okay.
So we should have that to you momentarily.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Actually, I have a follow-up question on that.
Sure.
Not on that specific issue, but on the Boot Road Pump Station situation. So, we had 3 things in play with them. One was they had offered to have supervisors come back to look at what they stated they have done to try to mitigate noise there.
Correct.
That was canceled because of operational changes.
Right.
The pump station appears to be non-operational for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Certainly no noise from it.
No noise from it. And I've asked repeatedly what's going on there. Haven't received a response.
They're not responding to your request for information.
No, not a bit. So I don't know if their equipment is not functioning or down for maintenance or what, there's no response coming in.
There was a suggestion by residents to take a baseline noise reading at the perimeter of the property, and I think it's good to at least do that. I know it's not about a noise violation, it's an ordinance threshold decibel level issue, but it would be good to have some kind of, well, there's an opportunity, no pump station operation.
Rick went out and did that last Thursday.
He did it?
The problem with that is, there is no baseline.
No.
The baseline is the ambient noise level from Boot Road and 202.
Right.
Whatever that is the baseline, depending on the time of day. And so far, our equipment has not been able to differentiate between the background noise and the pump station noise. Whether the human ear can hear it or not, our instrument can't differentiate.
I get it.
Well, Justin said that it was gonna stay this way.
I'm sorry?
Quiet?
Yeah. No, seriously.
He told Walker. He told
Well,
Walker.
that would be to take an
Yes.
ME1 and ME2, whatever
He
it
said
is. out
things
of
should
service.
remain the same. Happy holidays. He
Wow.
said you
Wow.
be quiet.
Okay.
Well, we'll see.
Good for Justin.
He's had enough. He's made enough to adjourn. Is there any other public questions or comments? Yeah, I'll second Hugh's motion. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean, I've got sewer authority documents for phase 3.
We already
Yeah.
I'm sending them right down. Yeah. So next year.
Yeah, I saw.
Okay. I sent an email to Jane, she was like, oh, I haven't heard about that.